Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So let me welcome everybody to today's time and lectures and discussions with Prof Osman. We're very privileged to have him to discuss this all-important topic. And let me also thank our brothers and sisters who have made time to come here. You know, their participation is encouraging, and most of us were on time, even though we are still expecting others to join. We have about 100 participants for this particular session, and that is so encouraging. It shows how hungry we are to look for knowledge, and Prof Osman is also prepared to share with us any day, anytime, as part of his responsibility towards us. So before we start, I just want to read a bit of profile. And before that, I would like to invite Sheikh Muntaka to tell us who is praying for us in the house to start before this profile. Sheikh Muntaka?
Yeah, please proceed. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that general prayer is okay.
Okay, okay.
You can just begin in the name of God. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, in the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most gracious, we pray that whatever we are coming to discuss here should be more beneficial to us. And we also pray that Allah should bless us the wisdom needed to digest whatever is going to be discussed here, and that we implement what we've heard moving forward. It should not just be listening and not implementing what is being said here. We ask Allah to bless us with that barakah and wisdom to do that. So I'll just move forward to tell you a little bit about Professor Dr. Ahmad Osumanu Harun. Most of us, we have been with him, but today we have new participants. That's why we are doing this again. So for those who are new to Prof Osman, so Prof Dr. Ahmad Osumanu Haruna lectures at University Putra, Malaysia, UPM. He was the former head of Science and Technology Research Unit, Institute of Ecosystem Science, Borneo, UPM. Prof Osumanu is the current head of Biodiversity Laboratory, Borneo, Institute of Ecosystem, Borneo, UPM. He is affiliated to a number of research institutes as a research associate. Prof Osman served as an expert reference for many national and international institutions, including NIFA of the United States Department of Agriculture, University of Cape Coast, that's Ghana, and many more. Prof Osman is involved in 53 research grant projects, and he's leading a number of research projects at UPM. So you can really be assured that you are going to get a lot of details, experience, and research about the research projects. This is the man who is involved in 53 research grant projects, and he's leading a number of research projects at UPM as well. He has published approximately 355 scholarly work. He has written 18 books, 18 chapters in books, published 220 reference journal papers, 100 papers in conference proceedings, and other publications. Prof. Osumanu has filed 13 patents and 5 trademarks in Malaysia, United States of America, Europe, Indonesia, and Thailand. Prof. Osumanu had graduated 47 postdoctoral research fellows and graduate students. He is currently supervising 13 postgraduate students. He has licensed some of his innovations to some companies in addition to technology, knowledge transfer to several communities. At the international, national, and university levels, his research innovations had won approximately 51 awards. Let me repeat that. 51 awards. So you can imagine the value, the impacts he's going to be creating on our life in this area of research. At the international level as well, Prof. Osumanu had been awarded special award entitled Most Promising Innovation. Furthermore, in February this year, he received International Award of Merit from the Republic of Croatia. In 2019, he was also awarded the most productive book writer at UPM. Since 2017 to date, Prof. Osumanu is earned UPM Excellent Service Award in recognition of his contribution to UPM. He had been awarded UPM's Vice Chancellor Award as Best Young Lecturer in Teaching and Gold Medal for being Best Lecturer in Teaching. He has also been invited as a prominent speaker in many national and international scholarly and or intellectual forums and meetings. Currently, Prof. Osumanu is on several advisory boards. He continues to render public services and consultancies to many organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the individual we are going to be benefiting from today. So I will encourage everybody to have your notepads, wherever you want to take the notes, and pay very, very attention to whatever he's gonna say. We are happy to have you, Prof. Dr. Osman Harun. So without much to say, I will welcome Prof. Osumanu and our guest, Prof. Osman. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the chairperson and the chairman. I would like to thank the Ghanaian Students Association for this meeting. It's been quite a series of them, and today is one of them. And I also like to thank the president and Dr. Mutaka for organizing this program. And definitely, I will also express my gratitude to the participants in particular. And I must say that today I'm really, really delighted to hear that some of my childhood friends, both in SecTech, AMAS, University of Ghana, some of them are here. And I think I'm very, very happy, and I really salute them. And then I hope that this will continue. Now, like you rightly put it, the subject is the science of research. And we are just asking a question. Please, am I audible?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, it is
Yes,
a question
please.
that
You are
we are
audible,
asking.
please.
Yes, Prof.
All right, thank you. It's a question that we are asking. So if we are missing something, then we pick it along. But if we are already up to the level and beyond, then it becomes a reminder. So that is the spirit that we are going to work in. And I must also say that this kind of topic usually takes me almost one semester, which means 14 weeks. So you can imagine the task ahead of me to compress everything within 1 or 2 hours. So you pardon me, I may not sound very detailed, and I will try as much as possible not to sound technical. because we are from diverse, backgrounds. Now, I'm not here to tell you what is science, but just a few highlights that I would like to share. When we talk about science, basically science is about knowledge. It's a process that you go through to acquire knowledge. Now, this knowledge usually must be applied. How you apply it, it can be applied to the natural system or the social world based on your understanding, so that it can help you to understand the natural world and the social world. But this understanding cannot come just anyhow. It must follow certain scientific norm. That's why we say science is a systematic way of finding out new, ideas. But this systematic way, whatever you say from the knowledge must be what? It must have some evidence, a very solid evidence. So it's not done at random. So this is why if it is science, then we need to observe. We observe the natural system. Maybe we are curious, we want to understand what is going on, therefore we are prone to ask questions. And then we will formulate what we call predictions. And these predictions are termed as hypotheses. Then from there, we will have to design our method or approach to get data, analyze the data. Then we will interpret and conclude and communicate the data. So this is all that science is about, but later I'll go into the details. So as you can see, it's really systematic. We don't do scientific research at random. We need to start from the basis to the end, so you can see the steps involved, right from asking questions until you determine what you do your conclusion. But within, for each ladder, there could be a lot of challenges. It looks very simple, but actually it could be very, very challenging. So now, because science is more about trying to understand situations with some sound knowledge, I would just remind you that we need to get into this kind of information and see how they work. You can see that we have different terminologies and different way of looking at things. So here, my job here is to move you from data until wisdom, because that is what science is about. So let's see how it works out. Now, data itself is meaningless. You may accumulate thousands of data, but they can be very meaningless, because data can be a symbol, can be numbers, can be raw. So not until we add some value to it, or we understand the data, it becomes meaningless or useless. So if you are doing research and yours is just to accumulate data, you are doing nothing, because anybody at all can accumulate data. Now, from here, what is also important is this data that you have generated can exist in any form. That is why generating data alone would send us nowhere. Now, by generating also, it depends on the situation. It may be usable or not, but if it's a raw data, then it has no value. Because of this, we have to move data from what is the junk of the information you have gathered, translate it into a better information that we will be able to understand. So here you are adding value to data, then it becomes information. So when you process the data, that is when we call it information, right? So this information also doesn't stop there. It must be meaningful, or it must also be useful. Otherwise, it has no value. So here, moving from data to information. Now, when you reach the stage of information, these are the things that you will be answering: who, what, where, and when. So you see that the data that has no meaning is becoming to develop meaning, and you should be able to use that information to answer some of these 4 W's. Now, once you are within the data also, if you are able to generate, turn it into information, and then you have some relationships, you can connect the linkages, then it is becoming useful. And if it's very, very useful, then we should be able to apply it to human systems. And because of this, we'll be moving to another stage called knowledge. So you see, from data to information, then we move to knowledge. So knowledge is nothing but you have what? You are applying data and information. So you have processed them, and then you are getting certain key information that you need about your work. That becomes knowledge. And remember, all the time, knowledge will try to answer how. So once you get to the level where this is all that science is about. Science is about why, because. So you want to understand and explain and give the reasons. So that is where you get to the knowledge. So even knowledge also, we have subsections. I'm talking about functional knowledge. That is what we are in for. So you will realize that even though you are having information, you are developing knowledge. That knowledge must come from a very, very condensed or appropriate information that you have collected, not any type of information at all. Because your intention is to make it useful. So if it's going to be useful, then we are talking about functional knowledge. Now, getting the knowledge alone also will not help. We need to understand the knowledge and then see how we can apply the knowledge. That is why understanding is very, very important. So understanding appreciates why. So you see now, you have moved from who, where, what, you went to who, now you are on why. So slowly, this is how you develop the scientific thinking. I'll be going through slowly. Now, once you get understanding, the other aspect will be that you should always understand that understanding comes with cognitive and analytical systems. So here, cognitive could be you must be very critical and be very curious and try to question things. Analytical means you break the information into pieces and then try to see what they make. So this is how you break the information down and then we move on. Now, by so doing, you have the knowledge. Now you synthesize the knowledge to get a new knowledge. So maybe let's say like this is why, let's say you go to class 1, you have acquired certain knowledge. You can never remain in class 1 with that knowledge. You need to move up to another level. So when you move out to that new knowledge, that means that you have advanced the knowledge that we have previously. So we are talking about advancement. It's very, very important. Otherwise, there will be intellectual stagnation. Now, to make it clear, we have moved from data, information, knowledge to understanding. But what is the difference? If you want to step up your scientific realm, then you need to know the difference between learning and memorizing. So if you are just memorizing, of course, you can get a knowledge, we can imbibe knowledge, but if we don't understand the knowledge and practice it, then we are just memorizing. So we are talking about functional learning in terms of understanding. It's very, very important because understanding goes with what? How you synthesize the information from known, from not new, but the basis came from what? The known. So you advance the knowledge. Now, from here, from knowledge fused with understanding, then we will reach a stage called wisdom. And this is the stage where if you are in the sciences, when I say science, I'm talking about both social sciences and then the applied sciences and the pure sciences. So you develop wisdom. Why is it wisdom that you are developing in the scientific or research norm? It is helping us to what? It's a process that helps you to judge between what is good and what is what? What is right and wrong, good and bad. Because at the end of the day, you are doing research and you don't want to mislead anything. You want to make it sure that everything is in order. Therefore, you must give credible whatever information you have. Extremely important. So when we get there, wisdom, actually, if you look at it, it is evaluating understanding. So here you see from data, information, knowledge, understanding fused with knowledge, then you will come down to wisdom. Now, why do we need this as scientists? Because you see, scientists, if you're a scientist or a good researcher, you must have vision. And remember that wisdom deals with what? Future. And because it deals with future, you can never have future without having a vision and how you chart your way. So this is very, very important in research because you cannot do the same thing and expect what? Different outcomes. So that is how we should look at it. Now, when you talk about wisdom in terms of your research, here we don't want to dwell in the present and in the past. because these are the things that we need to project into the future. So that is where we need to categorize what we call data and then move on to different skills. So for me, my advice here will be, if you are a student, you should be climbing. Otherwise, there will be no progress. But to be very honest with you, achieving wisdom in research is not easy unless you go through some of the phases that I've just outlined. So that means those with vision have gone through data gathering, they transform data into information, and they have been able to bring the information to another level called knowledge, which is now useful. And how do you translate it into knowledge? That means that you understand the data that you have generated. So to put it this way, what that I'm trying to say is data can be transformed from what? Ordinary raw data to information, information to knowledge, knowledge to wisdom. But you can't do this if you don't understand all the components. That is why understanding what you are doing is very, very pertinent and very, very important to do. Now, once we know that science is all about advancement of knowledge in which climbs to wisdom, then how do we think in science? Remember, please, the underlying word science does not mean pure sciences or applied sciences. Anything that deals with thinking and reasoning with certain set of standard procedures, then we are talking about scientific thinking. Now, what do we mean by scientific thinking? If you realize this, scientific thinking is an art. It's an art that enables you to use your skills. The skills must be used in a manner that it will be able to help us to solve a problem. Now, these skills must be able to what? Walk you through the process, but it must be very, very orderly or logical. Otherwise, we are dealing with random effect. So the key word will be, it must be logical, so that we don't do anything that others are doing that are not scientific. Right. So once we are there, what are the skills that we need in scientific thinking? These are some of the skills. One, you must be a very good observant, because science is about observation. So you must be very observant, and you must open up for questioning. So you must develop the skills of asking questions. And you can only do that when you are critical and analytical. I will go into that later. And when you are a scientist or you do research, don't be too personal, because you definitely, whether you like it or not, you will be subjected to questioning. So these are the things. And then you should be able to make predictions. Predictions here could mean hypothesis. You need to hypothesize something and then work on it and then try to validate it. It's very, very important. And then the other skills that will come along will be testing of ideas. The testing of ideas, the underlying thing will be your hypothesis. You have observed something, you want to test it, so you must be prepared to do some sort of work. At the end of the day, you are going to generate data to validate what you are thinking. So here, data that I'm talking about here has moved from raw data until wisdom or until knowledge. So here, this is where we talk about results and discussion, or the results and interpretation of your data. I'll come back later. And you don't do research for fun. We do research to advance knowledge, to contribute to society, have some impact. The significance must be there. Therefore, it is always good that you communicate your thoughts so that others may extend it or may improve upon it. Now, what are the types of thinking? There are so many of them. And depending on your orientation, your field, and your research, the first one, I'm not in any kind of preference or in any orderly arrangement. We have what we call analytical thinking. We have critical thinking, concrete thinking, convergent thinking, divergent thinking. These are some of the things that if you're a scientist, you have no choice. You have to know them, and you have to get into it and know them better. We also have what we call abstract thinking, creative thinking, holistic thinking, conceptual, and sequential. So there are about 10 of them depending on the way you define them, and it is a must, we must know them, because you get to a certain level, your research will dictate what kind of thinking you should go in or what kind of reason you should apply. So I'm not going into details. When we say analytical thinking, one thing about analytical thinking is you have to identify and define the problem or the situation. Because in science, we deal with facts, we deal with exactness. Therefore, we have to know exactly what is the problem, what is the domain, so that you are not subjected to unnecessary criticisms. Now, once you define this, you need to extract information. And where do you extract the information? Can be your literature review or from expert authorities. Then from there, you start to develop your solution to the problem or the problems. From here, you should move on to producing workable solutions. So if you are doing research and until you finish the research, you don't know what you have solved, you don't know what you have come out with, especially those of you who are doing your master's and PhD, then that is really, really a failure. Because at the end of the day, you must contribute and you must know what you are solving. So produce a workable solution for the situation or for the problem. Now, you have produced it, you have designed it, but you need to test it. So you test it and see whether it's working or not. If it's not working, how do you modify it? Or how do we go about it? So this comes under analytical thinking, right? So here, if you look at analytical thinking, it looks at a whole picture of a situation. It pictures a situation and breaks down that whole entity into segments, into pieces, into parts. Look at them microscopically, and then from there you start to tackle. So you see that it involves detailed examination of the segments for solution, because you don't want to leave anything out. Even the solution also, you must have an explanation. So this is why you need to be very detailed and pay attention to details. Now, that is just a little bit of it. We can go into it deeper and deeper, but not today. Now, when we talk about concrete thinking is just application of facts. You have concepts that are very factual. So you see here, it is not as deep as what? Analytical thinking. So depending on the kind of research you are doing, then this is how it should move, especially when you are using models or whatever, you want to just modify an aspect of a model. So that is how concrete thinking will be. So because the facts are there, the conceptual facts are there, you are just trying to draw on some of the, what they call it, facts. Therefore, there's no deep thinking here, right? There's no deep thinking at all. The depth is not there. That is why we say it is literal and right to the point. So it also, and this actually determines the depth of your work. If you're a PhD candidate, if you're a postdoctoral, a fellow, or if you're a master or undergraduate degree student, these are some of the things that we need to be very careful of. Now, what about critical thinking? Critical thinking, at the end of the day, will deal with synthesis of ideas. So here, for you to be a critical thinker, you must be very, very disciplined. That is one. Remember, in my last lectures, I talked about what is discipline. And a critical thinker, in terms of research, must be very systematic, but not dogmatic or not like robotic, right? Apart from this, these kind of critical thinkers, they are quite judgmental, but very objective. That is why whatever you do, they become critical of you. And that is the very good spirit of science, so that we don't commit mistakes, we don't give some random errors here and there. After that, there must be synthesis of whatever you have acquired. And it also goes beyond that. You need to evaluate. After evaluation, you need to reflect and see what are the loopholes, where should be improved. This is where you come to what we call reconstruction. So these things are really, really important in the science, especially if you want to be critical. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you present your work or your work is being evaluated at a critical point, you don't have to be emotional about it. You don't have to be personal. Remain open-minded. Now then comes to convergent thinking. Here, like the name implies, you are very focused and you want to come out with a correct solution for a problem or a situation, but you have already predetermined your steps. So it is very structured and you are looking for a solution. And that solution must follow the steps in a very logical manner so that we should understand that from A to B to C, you all have the linkages and the reasons. We don't choose them at random, right? Now, the ultimate idea about convergent thinking is to come out with the most suitable solution. So this is why you have already set the framework and you know your pointers very well. And then you need to get to the goal. Now, out of many solutions, depending on the type of research or depending on the type of orientation, you might end up having only one superior, what we call a solution, or one or two or three, depends on the situation, but not many. But generally, it could be one focus. Now, this is the opposite of convergent thinking. When you talk about divergent thinking, we want to solve a problem based on many solutions. So this is what we call transboundary research. It cuts across discipline. Maybe somebody is in, maybe like engineering, collaborating with somebody in the social sciences or somebody in the chemical environment. So this is what we call transboundary research. If that is what you are doing, then this is what we call divergent thinking. And even within the same field, there could be sub branches that you might need to bring them together and get the solution. So information is obtained from different sources, then you come out with the solution. That is what we call divergent thinking. And because you are in a diverse environment looking for a very suitable solution, like COVID-19, you can see everybody's claiming here and there, this should be done, this is what should be done, or whatever. At the end of the day, you are doing exploration. It's more to exploration. So it is exploratory in nature. That, in fact, we used to have a research grant program called exploratory research. So that is where it is. So like I said, it's the opposite of convergent thinking. Now we also have what we call creative thinking. Creative thinking, normally, it is the way that you create something new or a thought that is very new and unique. And sometimes this will lead to what we call inventions. Remember, later I'll talk about the difference between innovation, invention, and discovery. So these are the groundbreaking research. So we have COVID-19. If we could have some groundbreaking research to get it fixed, then that could be very, very creative. And out of this, we are talking about thinking out of the box or from your comfort zone. So it is out of the ordinary. If you are in that kind of realm, the situation may dictate for it. Now we also have what we call conceptual thinking. Conceptual, like we all know, you conceptualize something based on hypothetical thinking. You may be sitting in your room or whatever, then you try to visualize things or maybe create something in your mind, but it must be very scientific. At the end of the day, it's very abstract, but it will inform us, it will give us an insight. So this is how some of us conceive our research programs and then make it into reality, right? So that means that you must have absolute understanding of why something is being done. So here we are not talking about hazy ideas. We are not very sure, but we have the premonition that it's going to work. So those are the things. And then for conceptual, thinking is always at abstract level, but it can be applicable. I'll show you examples very soon. So for you to get to this level, you need to be very creative and you must have what? Intuition. So this kind of category, creativity is very at this peak, and then you must combine with your own intuition. Otherwise, you can never have conceptual whatever. This is why when you do your PhD or you do research, they say, where is your conceptual framework? If you cannot have the conceptual framework, then you did not understand or you don't have an understanding of what exactly you want to do. Now, we can also move it to another level called abstract thinking. Abstract thinking are thoughts, but they are not very concrete. They are very, very what they call superficial, because you have synthesized from the basis. And I'll show you an example very soon. So here you have the visualization of the bigger picture. Let's say like you want to paint a human being. Now, these kind of abstract thinkers, before they start painting, they know what to do. It's not like you paint the leg of the person, then you think about next, I'm going to paint the leg of the hand or the head or whatever, the eyes. By the time they start, they've already gone through all these segments, but they are only having the picture of the human being in mind. So this is what we call visualization of the full picture of a situation. And if you may agree with me, good researchers are good in abstracting. Within the shortest possible time, they are able to come out with proposals that are very abstract, very condensed, but very informative and very convincing. And other group of professions will be artists, storytellers, designers, innovators. They will all have to have a place here, right? Now, the last part will be sequential, like the name implies. You are processing information in a very orderly and prescribed manner, which means that it is very, very structured. So one step leads to another step. So they have some linkages. There's some relationship between the steps. So without finishing one step, like example, when we do research, I was involved in one research where we started from the laboratory, we screen, went to what we call greenhouse, then you have your micro scale, then you have the major scale. So at each level, you are having certain information that will lead to the final stage. So it is more or less like basic, applied, and development research. This is where we can relate it to. So the response of the steps, like I said, must be related, and it must be specific in order. So now that I have walked you through, the last part will be holistic. Again, holistic also can be a very groundbreaking research where you are looking at the whole system and not only a part of it. So here, example, if you have come out with a healthcare system, so here we are not the healthcare is dealing with the body and the mind. So here we are not interested in the healthcare that deals with only the body, but we are talking about both the body and the mind. So this is what we call holistic thinking. You don't segment them, you bring them together, but you know exactly what you are looking for. Now that I have given you this kind of thinking, let's be very, very specific now. To very, very specific, if we go to scientific thinking. Now, when you talk about scientific thinking, there are about 6 things that you need to understand. One of them is to rule out rival hypothesis. That is what is called placebo effect. What do we mean here is, let's say example, there is one medicine on the market that we use maybe to cure a certain disease. Now, maybe somehow somebody claimed to have another alternative, and that, what you call it, a medicine or medication is very effective, and people have been touting it. So psychologically, you also want to use it, but because you are following the masses that people have told you is good, and you also accept it in your mind and say that is good, sometimes the danger is, even if it's not working very well, psychologically, you are saying that it's working well. So here, you were not very objective. You were following one direction of hypothesis that say is good, but you are not looking at the other aspect of hypothesis that is not really good. So we don't do research like this. That is why a researcher must be very open-minded and be very critical. The next one is what we call correlation and causation. Sometimes we tend to be very, very confused about what is called cause and effect. Of course, in the English language, when you say correlation means association or a relationship, but in scientific research, if you don't choose your cause and effect very well, then you might have something else. For example, if you talk about body weight and size, and you say that body weight affects size, if it's not well proven and you use correlation, it can be very, very difficult because you cannot predict whether your weight will affect your size or your size will affect your weight. So when you have this, it's going to affect your research. This is why clearly you have to know what is your cause and what is your effect. And the only way to know this is to have a very good statistical background. I think in my next lecture with you, I will walk you through statistics and you will see. And this is why you hear some people, instead of correlation, they are talking about regression. They are two different things altogether. So we have to be very careful with this. And then never conduct a research where your claims are not what? Falsifiable. What do we mean by this? We are not saying that your claim is false, but you have to establish a research where there can be falsification of your claim. What do we mean? For instance, let's say we understand something called karma. People say karma. What goes round comes round. You see here, this is a saying, but until today, we don't have scientific way of testing this hypothesis or to test the claim. So in any research where we cannot test your hypothesis, that research claim can never be accepted because it has not gone through empirical studies to validate the claim. So this is very, very important. And when you are thinking in scientific world, you must think of replicability, how consistent your information is, and it is not due to chance. Because in science, there is nothing like chance. There is nothing like I'm lucky, I'm not lucky, fortunately, unfortunately. No, it follows a certain order that you need to follow. The other aspect that you have to be wary of is extraordinary claims. Extraordinary claims will also require extraordinary evidence. Example, we all know human beings or whatever system that is on the surface of the earth is under the influence of gravity. And all of a sudden you want to disprove that actually when you throw something and it goes up, not all things being equal, it will never come back again, depending on the altitude. So when you want to go against the conventional norm, then your claim must have extremely a very, very outstanding evidence for people to accept, test, and then see how it works. And the last part is what we call Occam-Razor's effect. In science, we are very simple, very exact. When you have two explanations for a certain situation and one looks simpler than the other, don't go for the complicated explanation to explain the phenomenon. You need to stick to the simpler one because that is the realm of science we don't want to complicate unless you want to do that. I will use the theory of evolution later in the course of my lecture. Now, again, let's move. We are still with the scientific the thinking. For you to be able to do that, you must have certain qualities. And what are these qualities? A good scientist must be curious. Curiosity must be there. Creativity. You must be open-minded. It could be yes or no. Skepticism. And then you must also be very, very honest. So ladies and gentlemen, we don't want you to cook data here. You don't want to manipulate anything. It may ruin your life because this will never be acceptable in any scientific community. Logical thinking, reliance on evidence is not about what you think, but the evidence should be there. Ethics, very, very important. Ethics can come in different ways. Intuition, and we must also be conscious of bias. Bias is very important. Later on, I'll talk about reliability, reproducibility, repeatability, and whatever later. Now, these kind of qualities will also lead us to conceptualization. You must have the ability to conceptualize. We must pay attention to details. And then we must have the courage to share findings. So if you have your findings, and you think that you don't want to share because it's challenging what we know, or it's just something that you want to keep to yourself, then you are being a disservice to society. So be excited based on what you have, credible information, and share it. Now, what are the advantages of thinking scientifically? This is it.
That's the beauty of science. It will compel you to observe, identify problem, research into the problem, develop your hypothesis, design your methodology, analyze your data, of course, get the data analyzed, and then you construct your conclusion and recommendation where necessary to advance the cause of humanity. That is the beauty. Now, slowly, I'm moving you into the real topic, scientific research. If you go detail, these are the loops. You can see that you can never run away without defining the question until you come down to publishing or disseminating your information. So all these parts must be clearly known. Maybe when I move along, I'll be sharing them one at a time. But let's say data interpretation, results, and whatever, in my next lecture, we will talk about it. Now, so let's see. When you see a research, it is not only one direction. So if you look at this slide that I'm sharing with you, yes, you ask a question, you do background research, you construct your hypothesis. What sometimes we think that you just go test and then workable procedure. If yes, you move on until you get your final conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes research doesn't work like that. So what if you get to this stage, procedure, and it doesn't work? You have to go back and do troubleshooting. Sometimes you might even get up to your results level, but your results may not be in consonance with your hypothesis. So there are two things here. Either you want to modify your objectives and your hypothesis, or you will have to go back and then give some sort of experimental data and then try to create future for others to research in. So all that I'm trying to say with this diagram is don't look at a scientific research to be like it's just one direction. Sometimes there could be so many challenges along the line. That's why your conceptual model should be very strong and it must be dynamic for you to modify. So this is just another example that I think you may share later. Now, what are the groups of scientific research that we are talking about? We have what we call qualitative. Most of you are aware quantitative, and then we have qualitative, quantitative research. Whatever the situation may be, you should be able to understand where you are. We all know these basic things. So if you have forgotten about qualitative research, these are the examples that I can share with you. One-on-one interview, you are talking about focus group, case study research, all sorts of things. So these are all qualitative that you should look for in case you are in that situation. Others may also want to group qualitative into 4 where they say survey. I'm talking about quantitative, sorry. You are talking about survey because survey, you can have some scales to transform your questioning into numbers. We have what we call correlation research, where you have to see how things relate. School dropout, maybe we have two groups, 50 students, 50 dropout, maybe 25 dropout, 25 graduated. We want to compare their lifestyle. So this is what we call correlation research, comparative research. And then correlation research is more to relational work. And then, of course, experimental research like we do in the labs and then in the field. Now, others also can just group them into 3: survey, correlation research, and experimental research. Now, these are the groups. Again, you should know which type of scientific research are you doing. Extremely important. So because of this, we have what we call basic research, applied research, and then development research. All these areas are very important because they have their own roles to play. It's very important that you should know this. So when we talk about basic research, I'm not going to detail. Of course, it's a systematic way of gaining knowledge, but we just want to understand the foundations of a situation or foundation of a gap. So if you are talking about COVID-19, if you realize that it's taking us a long time because we are taking time to understand the problem. So because of this, we are only accumulating fundamental information. Then from there, it will be led to what we call applied research. So basic research will be able to fill that gap. So example of basic research again is like this. How does PTSD, you all know what is post-trauma stress syndrome, develop if we want to know. And what does this tell us about the brain? So this is very fundamental. So this kind of research, you don't go for apply. Now, if we talk about apply research, it's just simple that we now have the foundation, we have the basic information, and then we want to what? Make good use of that information. Again, using COVID-19, you can see some claim that they are at the apply level, but some failed. So we are still understanding. So this is how it works. But if it's really true that we are applying and it's working, it must be a short term because we already have the foundation. We wouldn't want to waste much time there. So example, the same situation that I gave you for basic can be translated. When you step up the advancement, now it becomes, how do we use knowledge to reduce or eliminate PTSD? That means that we have the foundation. We have translated data into information, information into knowledge, and now we are trying to understand the knowledge and turn it into wisdom. So this is how it works out. So once we develop that area, we want to go large scale or we want to step up the knowledge in terms of application, then we are talking about development, technology development. And then again, technology development should be short because as we move on, we are acquiring more information and we are very confident with what we are doing. Therefore, we need to spend less time on it. So example, from basic, I have now moved you to apply. I'm now here showing you development research. So you hear that I will develop a system or a regime that will eliminate PTSD. So you see here now, we are talking about elimination. We have understood the basic thing. We have applied the basic, and now we are talking about elimination. So this is how you should structure. I'm not saying that every research must go through these phases. What I'm saying is you need to know where you belong so that you don't waste your time doing unnecessary things. So if I were to class them, the foundation will be basic research, apply, and then development. Of course, there could be tentacles, but for the sake of this presentation, I will want to simplify it. So again, this is a summary. If you get the slides, then you can see how they are related. Now, let me test you. Let me test any one of you here. If I were to give you this, and I ask you to arrange them in terms of basic research is also called fundamental research, applied research, and development research. I give you few seconds, and I would love to hear somebody telling me this is basic, this is applied, this is development. So if you don't mind, let me pause for a few seconds and hear from a taker. The moderator, do you allow me, please? Moderator?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Prof. Yes, Prof.
Just 30 seconds for the participants to read and see whether so far you have followed what I'm trying to say, so that I don't feel like I'm just making noise.
Sure, sure.
Any taker?
Anyone?
Anyone who would like to pinpoint and tell me this is applied, this is basic, this is fundamental?
Hello, Prof.
Hello?
This Mutalib.
All right, sir.
I think the first one, how can machine learning be used to better the identified nerve vessels at sea would be an applied research.
Okay.
Now,
right.
Establishing the something to identify another vessel will be technology.
All right.
Then what are the limitations will be the basic research.
Okay. Right. Let's see. Thank you very much, sir, Mr. Mutalib. So this is it. Doctor, sorry. So see whether you agree or not. Actually, the basic is what are the limitations with machine learning and how can it be improved? Then the next one, how can machine learning be used to better identify naval vessel at sea? And I will build a system that will identify the naval vessels will be development. So this is how it works out. So I think time will not permit me. I could have given you more and more and more. Right. Now, the next thing that I would like to share will be invention, innovation, and discovery. Then, very briefly, when you talk about invention, you see, we need all these things for us to know really what we are doing. So when you talk about invention, it's just a pioneer creation of something, a product or a device, and it can even be a process, and it can be a service. I don't want to be detailed about this. And when you talk about discovery, discovery is recognizing that something exists, but you were the first person to find it. So here the thing exists. If I go to the forest and I identify a plant species, I did not create it, but it just happened that I went there, I did my research and found it. Therefore, it becomes a discovery. This is why you hear that they say Christopher Columbus discovered Americas. Whether it's true or not, it's a discovery because America existed. Now, where I'm going to spend a little bit of time is innovation, because you agree with me that it's not every research that can lead to invention, and it is not easy to discover. But most of the things that we are doing now is more to innovation. So innovation improves or makes significant contribution. So it must be very significant, and it must be very, very impactful. So it must have an impact. What contribution to the existing product? It can be a process you are contributing. It can also be a device, or it can be a service. So that is what we call innovation. Now, if those of you who are in Malaysia, I understand that some of you across the world, we have friends from UK and the other parts of the world. In Malaysia, we have a low-cost airline called Air Asia, and it's one of the best in the region. So their tagline is, we innovate, others follow. So here you see, they never said we invent or we discover, because they are just modifying, or they have their product line, or they have their business model. So that's why they use the word innovate, and they really, really innovated the low-cost, aviation. So here, for you to innovate, you have to know the genesis of what? Innovation. You see, for innovation to come in, there must be a plan, and this plan must be combined and measured. So here we are talking about a plan and measured combination of what? Ideas. You can never innovate if you don't have ideas. We might also need objects. Objects can be machines, it can be technology. You need people. So when we bring them together, we harness their ability, then that leads to innovation. That innovation should be able to generate new things. It could even be organizations, business ideas, or technological revolution. So here again, without that kind of deep thinking, we will never get to this point. That's why I took my time to talk about thinking. Now, always look at innovation as competition. Innovation is a very healthy, thing that we need to do. So without competition, normally we will not innovate. So like now, everybody, almost every country is working on a vaccine or a research to contain or to what? Eradicate COVID-19. I'm using it because that's the issue. So here, healthy competition and strong demand will really, really drive us to our best. That is what I'm trying to say. And note that the intensity of what we call innovation, competition, is good for what? Innovation. And it also drives the innovation to productivity. So when you don't have competition, then we will not have innovation and we will not be productive. So even within your realm, you should have that kind of mindset, although you are competing with yourself. So why innovate at all? If we don't innovate, we will become irrelevant. If we don't innovate, we cannot be efficient. And if we need strategic plans, we need to innovate. If we want to create wealth for everyone, then we also need innovation. And remember, innovation also enables product and services to withstand the challenge of commercialization. If you have your product, you have your services, and you think that for the last 5 years you are doing well, you just have to remember that there's going to come a time, if you don't really change your product lines or your strategies or improve, you will be left out. So that is why you need innovation. So here, when we say innovation, I'm repeating again, it will include what? Processes, new business system, new methods, and of course, they will all have significant impact on growth and productivity. Very, very important. Now, is innovation urgent or not? Innovation will always be relevant and always urgent because one, we are having globalization. Now you see, again, I'm using COVID-19, it's a global issue. So we don't have a choice, we have to innovate. Now the world is becoming a very small village. Migration, to deal with migration, we need to innovate. Now we also need technological revolution and knowledge to move on. Our lifestyles are becoming very complicated, therefore we need innovation, and definitely we cannot run away from climate change. So all these things are very necessary, and we also need innovation to add value and widen our employment base. Extremely important for especially the developing countries. And we also need to innovate to improve our own quality of life in terms of challenging times. And the last but not the least will be, we innovate to make wealth good for our posterity. So these are the reasons why we need to innovate. So it is up to you to decide where you are, whether you are inventing, you are innovating, or you are discovering. This is why I brought this point. Now, slowly I'm moving down to the real issue. But for me to do this, what is scientific research now? It is a systematic way of what? Discovering new facts. It is also a systematic way to confirm either you are discovering new facts or you are confirming what is known, but in a different angle, or you are refuting or denying what is known. I'll show you examples very soon. But at the end of the day, your scientific research should be able to extend knowledge. So those are the realities that we are going to face very soon. Now, how do you get there? How do you discover new knowledge, or how do you contribute new knowledge? How do you, refute what is known and the like? There must be a well-thought proposition. This is why before you start your research, you have a proposal, a very scientific proposal with a very structured information. Now, why? Because once you have this, it will help you to find your niche where you want to research into. It may also help you to be very original, and it will help you to make significant impact, and then you can extend knowledge. So when your thoughts cannot do these four things, then actually you are not going to do research, you are just going to do documentation, which anybody can do. Now, the next aspect will be, how would you execute this proposition? The proposition must be well executed. That is why you must have a frame. Otherwise, there could be a lot of problems. So those of you who are interested, this is how you structure your research proposal in the very detailed way and then get things done. I think I will not have time to share with you this. Now, other things that you have to look into is the quality of the data that you are going to generate. Very important. You need to be very meticulous when it comes to your data interpretation. Like I said, we'll have another section for only data discussion and then data presentation. So I will leave this here. And of course, you must have a very clear goals. I'll talk about them very soon. That will lead into the achievement of your work. Now, what are the elements of the ultimate? Originality and quality of your work is very important. Relevance and timeliness of your work. We are also talking about novelty, or the uniqueness of your work must be there. And then we must have what you call inventive or innovative steps. That's why I took my time to talk about this. And the depth of your contribution. If it's really a scientific research, I'm not talking about scientific report or technical report. Right. Now, slowly you will be heading towards your what? Your literature. So here, what are we talking about? Your literature is what? Your reading goal. So the author's goal, and then you have your own what? You must have questions. And then here you must understand even basic things like figures and tables in the paper or whatever document you are reading, and then understand the flow of the document you are reading. Because you need to put yourself in that direction. Otherwise, you might not get much. And that is where plagiarism will start from. So here, asking questions, what do we mean? You have to have understanding of the author's motivation. Otherwise, you will not be able to ask good questions. You also have to ask a question on the methodology. Is it really valid or not? And then you also have to know why the author wrote that way. It's very, very important. And then we also have to get into something that we call what are the results? So if you know the results, what are they trying to tell you? Can you really get something from the tables and the figures? Very, very important. And are they really valid? Are they error-free or not? And then how was the data, the interpretation of the data, was it really sound or not? If it's not sound, what are the flaws? What are the things that you can pick from? They are also something that you cannot go out without asking. And then the next one will be the author's opinion will be there, but you have to draw your own opinion from the author. Otherwise, you are just following. So that is where you need to be very, very critical, because the author's opinion might not be necessarily true. So that is why you need to get into this. Now, when you are reading, like I said, you need to be critical. Of course, you need to be kind. You don't have to be very, very destructive. And then you read papers that are related to that paper, and then discuss the paper with others. Remember, others may know better, or there are certain things that you don't understand. You need to do that. And then from there, you can build the story of the paper. Extremely important that you need to get into this. Now, the next one will be look for credible information. When we say critical, not every information is useful. And remember, not every information is true. Therefore, you should know how to retrieve credible information from credible databases so that you don't really expose yourself. And then analyze the content of the work very well. Now we have a lot of false journals, predatory journals that are giving false information. You have to be very careful. Now, once you get the information, like I said, synthesize the information in relation to what you are interested in, right? And at the end of the day, the information must be put in a very nice folders so that you don't waste your time, right? Now, after all these stories, I'm going deep now into the scientific research. When we say scientific research, like I said, it's a systematic way of discovering new facts. So I give you one example. I do remember during our secondary school time and whatever, we were told that the atom is the smallest particle of what? Any kind of system. But today we know that it's no longer like that. With the advancement of technology, we know the particles that are very, very tiny are quarks and leptons, and they are the fundamental building blocks of matter. So today we are not talking about atoms, we are talking about quarks and leptons. So people are predicting that maybe in the next 50 years, we might even discover what? Very, very minute ones or very tiny ones. So you see here, this is what we call something is new, right? In other words, we can also look at this. I think about 4 or 5 years, we all know folic acid. Folic acid is used in the medical field to prevent miscarriage and then birth defects. But I think some scientists in Australia discovered what you call vitamin B3, which is now far better than folic acid. So you see now, this is something new. So this is what we call new discovery. So now, if in your own well, if this is a wastewater and all of a sudden you want to turn it into, let's say, like a fuel, petrol, to fuel, let's say, plants from water to this, that could be a groundbreaking research and it can be new. So this is what we mean. Then we can also look at research from another point of view where you are just confirming what is known in a different world. It can be in the tropics, in the temperates, or in the what? In the what we call it the subtropics. So here, this is an example that I can share. Until today, unless you are gender biased or you are a racist, there is no scientific evidence to say that human intelligence depends on race or gender. There is no scientific evidence. However, if you skewed your work to favor that, is your own kind of what we call it, a cup of tea. But what we do know is intelligence can be affected by what? Environment. So we are not talking about the phenotypic aspect. We are, genotypic aspect. We are talking about the phenotypic aspect. So if you born somebody into a remote village and he has no access to computer, and somebody born into the city, born and bred into the computer system, you cannot assess their intelligence based on computer skills or what expertise. So this is how it works. And then again, sometimes also we can do research to really deny or refute. Years ago, we were told that the earth goes what? We were told that the sun goes around the earth. You get what I'm saying? So here we now know that the earth rather goes around the sun. And those who discovered this, if you read history, some were even killed. So here you are not going to discover just to refute anything. You refute with facts. It's not that you are criticizing for anything. So that is another aspect of scientific research. Now, if I were to summarize the definition, this is what we mean by scientific research: systematic way of discovering new facts, or you confirm what is known, or you deny. At the end of the day, we are extending knowledge. So again, you need to know where your research fits. Now, you can never arrive at this without adhering to what? Rules and procedures. What are the rules and procedures? In organizing your research, it must be very well organized, follow all the norms, the protocols that we have, and then once you are conducting the research also, there are a lot of things that you need to go through. Time will not permit me. Maybe during the open discussion, we will be talking about them. And then, of course, you need to analyze your whatever information you are generating, and you need to also interpret. Interpret means that you need to make meaning out of what you have. That is very, very important, and I find most students weak in this area. And once you go through all these, at the end of the day, it should lead you to making valid conclusions. And in certain cases, it will also lead you to make some recommendations. So this is basically that all the research is about, but let's go a little bit deeper. So then, how do you plan your research? The planning can come in different ways. You can look at it from different angles, but for the sake of this presentation, I will advise that you start with the literature search. That could be very, very important, so that you know what has been done, what has not been done, then you know what you want to do. Now, for you to do that, why am I stressing on this? I'm stressing on this is just imagine, can you really justify your work in a very scientific way without knowing the literature, without knowing what has been done and what has not been done? Therefore, you need the literature. And literature here does not mean only books or whatever. I'll come down to that. Now, how do you execute your intentions if you don't know the procedures or the methods, the materials that you have to use? Therefore, you need to follow on the literature. You also have to generate data and then interpret the data. How do you compare your data to others, and how different will be your data? That one is also essential. And even if you want to conclude your work or recommend, you must recommend within the domain of the research that you are doing, unless you want to extrapolate. That one also has its own limitation. So this is why the literature is very important. Now, when we talk about the literature, it could be credible information that are only relevant to your work. So here we are talking about books only for basic information, but generally we may prefer that you read more journals. Of course, technical reports will be very important, and other databases that you could visit, right? Now, when you are talking about the databases, there are so many of them. I'm not talking about newspapers. I'm talking about credible databases. It can be agencies, government agencies, international agencies. All these things are there for you to check. But one thing we need to do is, when we are scrutinizing the review, it should be able to give us a broad overview of the state of the art that we are trying to review. It needs to be broadened, and then we understand. Otherwise, we might duplicate other people's work. And it should be able to establish what has been done previously or nothing at all has been done. Then you will be able to get into the subject matter. So this is all just background reading. And then once you have the background information, especially if you are new and you are not sure and you don't understand so many things, it will be good you fall back to the textbooks and get the basic understanding so that you build your knowledge. Because when you read journals, they are highly condensed, highly technical, especially when you are going into a new area. One important thing that we always forget is to discuss your area of interest with subject specialists, because they can tell you with experience, they have done a lot, they can tell you this research will not go nowhere. This research is dead, it's saturated. These are the new pathways that you need to chart. So those are the things that I think you need to be very, very wary of. And please do not undermine your colleagues. Colleagues can be another good source of information that can help you to develop research projects. So it's very, very important that you take this seriously. And it's also important that always try to do basic readings to establish your foundation and to consolidate your topic before you move on. So you build from the foundation and then move. It's like a pyramid. That is the way you set it up. Now, as you go on and you try to find your niche, you are getting more information, you are understanding the information, then you do very, very thorough reading. That means now you are more into journals. And the journals also, we are talking about reputable journals, very journals that have been referenced and they are credible. Then you move into that area. Now, it's very important that as you read, don't read like storybooks. You read and then write the way you understand in complete sentences. Do not copy. If you copy verbatim, it means you didn't understand anything and you could be charged with plagiarism. So we need to be very careful. And then as you read, you need to be very critical. Don't just describe the content of the work. When you describe, you are not being scholarly, you are not being intellectual. So be critical here. I just give you an example. Let's say this is a journal that I'm reading. Some of them may be false, some of them might not be very, very good. So as you read, don't accept everything. Be critical here. Now, if you take your time, those of you who know statistics, when you say statistically something is not significantly different, the next sentence should not say that the values are the same. So if I underline this, it says statistically not different. I'm being critical, but the way you use nevertheless, it shows that oxalic was higher. It can never be like this. Because when you say no difference, the difference that you see is due to statistical error. It's not acceptable. So this one alone will negate this paper. I wouldn't want to read this paper. The other aspect will be what? Look at this part. If you present a scientific data, it's very, very important that you show us your error term. So you see that in this table, we don't have standard error to evaluate the what? The validity of the work. So for me, I will reject this paper. So there's no statistical information to tell me what is the superscript AAAA, what do they mean? I will not take this paper serious, even though it has been published. When you do relationship, you establish relationship between two variables, we must know your sample size. You will see here, we have 5 data points, but these data points can be raw data or they can be average of many. We don't have that information because the sample size is not there. So this paper, if you subject it to scrutiny, it doesn't qualify. So why would you waste your time to read it? The other aspect is to be very analytical. If you are being analytical, this is another paper that I would never recommend this paper. I would never quote this paper. Look at it. Why you are doing comparison and you are only showing us your mean, but we don't have any statistical information on it. Now look at this. This data is a quantitative data, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8. So when you have a quantitative data, it's better you establish relationship, then you can do prediction. Like we are talking about regression analysis or whatever. You don't use bar chart for quantitative data. Therefore, I will not take this seriously. You are losing a lot of information. Now look at the error terms. The bar that you see, this bar is telling us the error. This bar is telling us the error. You can imagine in your research, your bar is more than 50% of your mean. So that means that you have more than 50% error in your work. No one will take you seriously. So these are the realities. So when we say being analytical, these are the things that you have to apply as you move along. Now remember, the search and the progress of your research, it goes cumulatively. You don't start research today and finish tomorrow. It's a cumulative kind of thing. So we need to do it in a very cumulative way, but very, very current. Keep updating. So that is how it is. Now, to be quite deep now into the reading, when reading a research, there are so many reasons. One could be that the information is part of your paper or your thesis or your report or whatever, or you just want it for your literature review or proposal, or you just want it to keep abreast with time. So you may have your own motivation of reading papers or whatever, or any document. These are the motivations. But if you want to be technical and scholarly, you need to qualify the paper that you are reading. Just now, I show you one of the papers that I just show you. For me, I will say not good. I'll qualify it to be not good. So here, you must have what we call worth reading and then not worth reading. So the one I show you that's not worth reading because too many flaws, then you focus on those that are very important for you to read. Now, for beginners, if you are not very used to technical papers, it will be difficult for you to understand, but just keep going. It's a matter of time. You will come, you will see the end of the tunnel. So why is it difficult for you? Because the writers have already assumed that you know the background information or knowledge. That's why I say if you don't have the background, you have to go and read the basic textbooks or whatever, or you have to see the subject specialist. And then sometimes it could be difficult for you to even understand your models, the figures. Again, you need to go to the fundamentals. And then it can also be so condensed that the details are not there. So these are the things that you are going to encounter and you have to work on it. Now, reading the research papers in particular, these are the things that I would suggest. Like I said, the paper must fit the bigger picture of your work. Look at it, whether it fits or not. Number two, what are the key contributions of the paper to your work? If there are no key contribution to your work that you want to do, I think you don't want to waste your time on it. And are there some key assumptions? You know, in any research, we have assumptions. What are the assumptions behind it? If you have the assumptions, you look at them because some of the assumptions can be contradicted or they are contradicting in nature. So you need to see so that you don't quote the wrong thing. And then what are the processes involved in carrying out the research, the methodology of the research? These are all things that you don't have to miss, that you need to be very careful. So fitting the papers, now here, not exactly, because in your research, you're going to have the justification part, the methodology part, the what we call it in resource interpretation part. So you should know where you can fit them and where the essential parts. Once you do this, the next thing will be what are the key contributors. Now, if you want to know quickly what the paper has, go straight to the what? The abstract. Read the abstract. It should be able to tell you whether you want to proceed or not. This is one aspect. You also can go straight to the discussion aspect after the abstract and then read that part and see. Or you can go to the conclusion part and then you see. So don't waste your time. These are the simple things that you should do. So if they don't fall in what you want, you just get it off. Then the next one will be, you have to also understand the assumptions. These assumptions sometimes can be hidden. Some writers are very smart. When they see their weaknesses, they want to hide them. Such writers are really not credible. So you have to spot them out, because when you build your case on wrong assumptions, your work will be rejected. So are the assumptions valid? You have to ask this question. Can the assumptions be challenged or not? All these things must be known. Now, the next part will be look for contradictions, because you are going to build a case for yourself and say that no work has been done or there is little information. So you want to go into that area. So did the authors contradict their points or not? Just now I have shown you one example. And then did the key, work of the authors, do they contradict others? If they contradict others, who is correct? It's very, very important. And then here we have to look at this, whether their work contradicts established facts. If they are established facts, and then they have shown beyond reasonable doubt that their work is credible, then it becomes something new. So this is very essential. And then if there are any contradictions, as much as you can challenge them, because if you imbibe them, it may lead you to a disaster. Now, once we are done with this, check the methodology, the processes involved, scrutinize them very careful. So here, this is important because it will help you to accept the validity of their claims, whether they are justified or not. And can the claims also be challenged or not? Because you are finding a niche and to add credence to your work. So they are very important. And then can we also confirm the claims or not? And if all, can we modify? Assuming the claims are true, they are very valid, but you want to modify and do a research in that area, there is nothing wrong. Remember that your aim is not to criticize people. You are just trying to find your niche and then try to fill a gap. That's why you want to clear all these doubts and then solidify your thinking. So these are the things that I can share with you. Now, all the things that I've just shared with you, you put them together because they are in pieces. So what you can do now is to write a background information about what you read and then follow by the sections. The section by section, this is where, remember, you have analyzed them. Now you are synthesizing them. Then it becomes an area of research. Of course, it's not only one paper. You need to read a body of papers. Then you can come back to this. So keep reading. Sometimes if you don't understand some parts, but with time, it can get you the focus. References is very important. You also have to focus on the paper. The references will come later. Any reference that is not very relevant, you don't waste your time on that. And then you have to also, sometimes you have certain questions that were not answered or certain things are not clarified in the work. You have the right to write to the writers. They will be more than happy to reply you and then let you understand. And that is where you have collegiality, and then you can establish relationship and then your extension of work connections. So this is how things work out. So summarizing it, getting down to the literature, remember that literature is a scholarly write-up that you are reviewing for your work. This is all that you are talking about. It's not a newspaper type of thing. It could be journal papers, technical conferences, but they must be scholarly. It could even be thesis, books, or manuals. These are the things that you are reading. Now, this literature review, what does it do in summary? What it does is it identifies relevant literature in a particular field of research. It will identify it for you. Then you will evaluate the literature and find out the gaps. Now, the gaps that you want to fill, you can only see them in the literature backed by other expertise. That is why you need to read the literature to find a gap and then try to make sure that the gap exists and is original. Therefore, it must be researched into. Now, for that, you will have to have this that I have already shared. So I'll move on to the next slide. So why the literature? You also have to demonstrate that you have read and you know the gap, and the gap that you want to fill is original. So if it's original, what is your evidence? That is why you need the literature. It's not scientific research, is not what you think, but the facts of the matter must be very clear. So those are the things. And then what are the steps? If you are having the steps, the first thing you should look for will be relevant keywords. Where do you get keywords? If you are a student, there is no harm you consult your supervisors or expect specialists, they can tell you. I mean, time will not permit me to give you those kind of examples. If you don't have this, you can go online, use the what? Online search tools. Boolean operators, you should be able to use them to get the keywords. Now, why are we interested in keywords? You are interested in keywords because sometimes papers may be published in certain journals that you are not interested in those journals. Let's say, like, if I'm in agricultural sciences, and then maybe I'm not interested in reading something on, let's say, if you don't mind, maybe social sciences. But by using the keywords, I may miss the title, but the keywords may pull something very important for me to read. This is why you need keywords. So keyword will back up titles. Later, when we are talking about publication, I'll talk a lot about keywords. And sometimes also, a paper must be what? The title of your paper may be very limited. It is of no relevance. But the keyword, somebody type the keyword, even though they might miss the title, they will be able to retrieve your paper, or you will be able to retrieve that paper. This is extremely important. So by finding that, you will be able to get more relevant literature to avoid you saying that nobody has done this and you want to do. You have not even exhausted the literature. How do you make such a claim? So use advanced operators, ProQuest, Science Direct. Most of these databases will have them. Now, if you are qualifying the literature, remember that the title of the paper may come in, like I said, the abstract, and then the conclusion. Another quick way to read the paper. That is the first thing. Now, look for high impact papers, please, not predatory papers. Give them the priority because they have the cutting edge information, the up-to-date information, very authoritative in nature. And then you will also have to get to renowned researchers and their papers because they are the leaders in that research. It's very, very important that you don't reinvent the wheel, and rather do not concentrate too much on conference papers, technical reports, PhD thesis. They must be very, very little, not much of them. Extremely important. And then when you are qualifying what you are reading, group 1 must be classed as what? Relevant. Group 2 might be relevant. Group 3, not relevant. Forget about them. Concentrate on groups 1 and 2, and then you move on. So here you are doing filtering. This is what we call information retrieval and processing. Have timelines. Have timelines to read the papers and then try to pull out because time is of essence. This will enable you to build the story. The story is the gap that you want to build. And then it will also enable you to be critical in terms of evaluating your papers. Now, once you are there, by being critical and then you are following the discussion, it should give you a signal as to where the discussion is heading or where the gap is. So it is a pointer that you should be following. And then we will come down to what is the story. Was it based on what? What are the issues? What are the current issues? Now, if there are current issues, how is research progressing in that area? So that you don't be at the bottom of the research. You must be on top of the research. Then you move with what? The research movers. That is the thing that you should put in your mind. So here, place the papers into future, present, and past, because you might need certain references, but not too old. And then you come to the present, and then you project into the future. That will sell your research. That is why we say place priority in terms of current and old will be less, but you produce into the future, right? Now, if you want to cite more current papers that are leading into the future and less old papers. Of course, if you are dealing with a research type where you have if the old papers are still relevant, there have been no replacement or no additions, and these people are well established in your area, then you can cite them. Or you are tracing back something on history or whatever, then you are allowed to do that. But as much as you can, it will be good for you to go for more current one, because the current ones might have already referred to the old ones. That is the logic. So it's very, very important that you look into that. But if you are writing a thesis and then you want to break down your thesis into subjects, then you can look at how good textbooks break down subjects. But if it's paper, we already know the structure, abstract to conclude to references, we know. Now, then from here, you just build your story. How do you build it? You have to know what has been done about the issue, what has not been done about the issue, what needs to be done, what you would like to do, and how you do it differently and why. So this is how you put the context, and now everything becomes solid for you. You have no hesitation and you can move on. You can justify your work anywhere. So the getting to the other parts of the presentation will be what we call problem statement. Remember, we don't just write a statement of the problem anyhow. It must be very present, it must be relevant, or you must be able to what? To address the situation in a very, very convincing way. That is what we call. Now, how do you do this? If you miss the literature review, you can never write a good problem statement. Very important. Sometimes you might read the literature, but you might be needing the backing of the intellectuals in that area for them to shape it for you. So this is how you go about it. You can also consult the intellectuals, the expert in the field. Of course, sometimes also it can come through critical observations, can also help you a lot. And then analytical thinking, you cannot run away. This is why I took my time to talk about all this experience. You reach a certain level in science or in research where experience counts a lot. You can tap on your experience to come out with the problem because you are very used to the system. And then, of course, you need to go through the literature. Now, coming out with a problem statement alone is never enough. You need to subject your work into questioning, scrutiny. This is why I started with that. So ask questions, because by asking questions, they might be able to lead you into your solutions. So these are some of the things that you need to do. Now, why are you asking questions? Because the questions must lead you to your objectives, and a set of objectives can become your goals. So this is how it is. What is a goal? A goal describes anticipated outcome. And a set of objectives constitute what? A goal. So if you have one goal, maybe you have 2 or 3 objectives to satisfy that goal. And questions and hypotheses can help you to get to that level. Now, so then you come to the objectives. Remember, the objective is the ultimate aim of any researcher. Any researcher, we are in point A, we want to get to point B. So how to get to point B will be your what? The discipline. This is why I took you through some of the scientific norms. So you are here, you want to get here. The discipline here is the scientific norm, the rules and procedures that you need to follow to get you there, right? But whenever you are stating objectives, remember that objectives are measurable outcomes that relate to your goal. And they must have certain keywords that we use. Either you want to increase something, you want to improve something, you want to design something, you want to reduce. These are the words, but you need to be very specific. That is why a good objective must have this content called SMART. Very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and then it must be timely. So these are some of the things that you need to be very careful of. So you measure. Why are we saying measurable? It must be measured because when you say to reduce, to improve, they are subjective. By how much you want to improve, by how much you want to reduce, we need to measure them. And then, of course, don't be too ambitious. Don't set objectives that are not achievable within the scope of your capability. And then the realistic, you have to be very realistic. If you can't tell me that you want to use 2 or 3 days to come out with COVID-19 vaccine, it doesn't work like that, right? And then it must be timely. Don't do research that by the time you finish is already irrelevant or outdated. So if you are a PhD candidate and you are spending more than 5 years to finish your research work, it's getting too late. Master student, if you go 3 years, it's too much already. So those are the things. Now, avoid using these kind of things in stating objectives. Never try to make this mistake. If you don't know today, you are being told. Remember, these are what we call low impact words. So don't use the word to study. To study what? The research itself is a study. to investigate. Research is investigation. To observe. Research is for observation. To clarify. That is why you have your hypothesis to test, to ascertain. What are you ascertaining? To verify. These are low impact work. You will see them in a lot of journals or whatever. I'm not saying that they are wrong, but they are not appropriate. You can say them in a different way. So these are some of the things that you should use. High impact work will be to determine, to quantify, to produce, to compare, to model, to construct, to design. So these are some of the keywords you need to use. Now, even if you say to increase, you need to tell us by how much, by how many percent. So these are some of the things. This is more to sciences or whatever, right? Now, once you are getting down to your objectives, don't forget your hypothesis. These are the hypothesis is what you are predicting, your premonition. Therefore, it must be clearly stated. It is very, very unfortunate that you read a lot of papers, you read a number of PhD theses, and no underlying hypothesis. How can you drive? How can a car move without a driver unless you are remote sensing it? Even that one also you need remote controller. So these are some of the things. So what is a research hypothesis? Just your premonition or a scientific guess that you have an intuition that something will happen or something need to be done and you haven't done it and you are sure, you are not sure, but you think it will happen. That is what we call hypothesis. Now, testing of your hypothesis is very important. That's why you need to know statistics, whether you have to accept the null hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis. Now, please do not forget this important aspect of scientific research. All these aspects must be known on your fingertips. So here, I'm not going into details, but just to show you. Example, you must know the difference between law and theory, because you need to, sometimes you are going to draw on some of them for your work. So here, I'm not going into details, but what I can say is both law and theory, they all explain what? They describe something that you observe in nature. They are descriptive in nature. And remember that both require many observations and experiments. You can never come out with a law today or tomorrow or theory. It must be established by the scientific community based on a huge, a generation of data and experiments. And then both must be accepted by the majority of the communities, not only you and your friend. It must be well established, become a law or a theory. They have these things in common. And they also have this in a way that you need to understand that theories are not laws and they are never related to what? Laws. They are completely different. Theory, actually, the evidence of theory can be challenged, but you can never challenge a law. Once a law is challenged and is flawed, the whole of the understanding is gone. So theory can be challenged, but we don't challenge law, right? Now, theory is widely accepted, but it's more to explanation. If you see later on the classical difference, and it is supported by scientific evidence. I'll show you what I mean very soon. Now, look at here. Theories are not just ideas. They are not guesswork, but they tell us how about a scientific work. You will realize that we get to a certain point, law can never tell you this. I'll show you very soon. So theories are not just opinions about concept. They are well-established information that have been developed into wisdom, right? Now, scientists conduct a lot of work and test experiments to prove a theory. It's still going on and on and on. People are proving until it becomes a law or until it is disproved. Now, what do we see here? Sorry, let's move on to here. Now, like I said, when we come out with theory, we keep doing testing again and again and again and again, and that does not qualify it to be a law. So here, what I would like to say is law describes a fact that is completely accepted. It describes only. Laws do not explain because they cannot answer why. If you want to know why and how, then that is theory. So you need to know this so that when you quote, you don't quote theory and say it's a law. in your work. It may flaw your work. So law is not challenged, but if it is repeated, then it becomes false. It's either yes or no. Once it becomes false, anything based on that law must be scrapped. It has become false also. That is why it's very, very difficult to challenge a law. So law will only explain what happens. Theories explain why and how things happen. So this is the very, very simple difference between law and theory. So if I were to say this, I think it should be whatever I'm trying to make it clear to you. So this is what I was trying to say. Now, the summary of it will be notes. Law does not explain why. It just say what happened. If what happened, then you say it's a law. But theory, once you say that, you explain why and how, you are talking about theory. So that is how it works. So let's see, the law of gravity. The law of gravity tells you why, it tells you that something goes up, it will come down, or something cannot just shoot up without any pressure. The details of it, why and how, is not the law. It goes to theory. So example, the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution will tell you how and why. It is up to you whether you believe in it or not. So this is how you should look at it. So please take it serious. So if I were to summarize, theory explain a phenomenon, explain phenomena with facts based on numerous studies and explanations. Now, what about principles? Scientific principles, they are ideas that are based on scientific rules and laws that are generally accepted. So you see here, principles are also accepted, but they are based on what? They are based on rules and facts in terms of laws. So they are ideas. Now, the other aspect of principle, of a principle will be that it's a fundamental truth. Normally, it must be the truth, nothing but the truth. And that are the foundations for others to study. So it is something that you cannot lie on. Once you lie upon it, then it will crumble. Now, if that is the case, that's why you see a number of principles are actually qualitative in nature. Sometimes you don't have the mathematical expressions for them. Not all of them, but some. But some also confuse principle with what? Laws. So they will say Archimedes' principle is a law or whatever. Actually, you need to be very careful where you are explaining this. Now, these are guiding ideas that scientists use to make predictions. We use them to make predictions, and later on we perfect them into what? Laws. That's how it is. Now, so again, when you talk about principles, they also explain why and how. But they have not reached the level of theory, or they have not reached the level of laws. Right. So here, look at this. The speed of light is the same for all observers. So this is a principle by Einstein. And then this is another one called mechanisms. These are more or less like how systems work, parts of system, how they come together to work. That is what we call mechanism. So let's say like a natural or established process by something taking place or is brought about. That is all. Now, you also have to define your work. Terms of your work must be explained to avoid criticism. Otherwise, your work will be too broad and it has no focus. So you have to define and then have your concepts. Concepts are abstract ideas or notion of your work, but you are yet to establish them. That becomes a concept. It must be very clear. That's why you have your conceptual framework or the proof of concept. Have assumptions. Your assumptions must be very clear, and they are just ideas that you are dealing with. They must be simple and straightforward, and usually they must come in argumentative form. That's all that assumption is about. But remember, assumption may be true or false, but you have to go for the most probable one or the likely good one. Now, don't be too ambitious. Limit your scope because it's a niche that you are carving. You are carving a niche, so don't broaden it too much, but be very deep in it. That is why you must have your limitation. to avoid criticism. And remember, your work is not going to solve the whole of the world's problem. It's just a small thing that you need to solve. Therefore, if it's possible, provide reasons for your limitation. If you think that you can have only 3 objectives based on certain credible reasons, you will have to do that. Significance of your work must be there. It must have some impact. Don't do research with low impact. There must be impact on not you only, but on society. Right. Provide evidence or explanation about your work. And this is where you need to have justification, and it must be argumentative. And then what are some of the scientific establishment? In the sciences, we call something treatments. But in other parts of the academic realm, treatment means independent variables. So here you must choose your independent variables very well. Otherwise, you will never achieve your objectives. So example, if you don't choose your objective very well, you will take your independent variables, but they will have no effect on the dependent variables. So here, this is an example. You can see that these treatments are showing very, very significant plant rooting system compared to this. So because you have chosen the independent variable, there are 5 of them. 2 of them are doing very well, 2 are not doing very well. So this is what we are trying to say, that you should choose them. Otherwise, your objective will not be achieved. When you do research, remember your experimental material. The experimental material may be your subject, maybe human beings, plants, or whatever, depending on the type of your research. But the experimental material must represent the population that you are studying. Otherwise, you may make a very false conclusion. So if you're talking about Africans, then you cannot talk about other parts of the world. You need to deal with it if that is your subject. That's how it works. Now, individuals within the experimental material are called experimental units. So if you are doing a survey, you have 1,000 people, and then each person is going to fill your questionnaire. Each individual becomes a what? Your experimental unit or plot. Or you might say that a group of people, maybe you say people from West Africa, people from South Africa, the southern part, the northern part, and whatever. If you group them according to that, it also becomes a unit. So you have to know your experimental unit, and if you don't choose them very well, you are going to have a problem. In the sciences, we have something called replication. Replication actually is how a group of individuals having the same dependent variable reacts. So in the social sciences or in the humanity, you call them your subjects, because you are assuming that if you are going to interview 10 people with the same 10 questions, those people that you are choosing, you are telling us that implicitly they are what? Their reaction, their attitude and mentality are almost similar. But we in the sciences, we call them replications. So when you start to have differences within your replication, getting the same independent treatment, then there is experimental error. That is why we need replication to check the validity of your work. If you remember, you cast your mind back to the paper that I just told you, they never show us experimental error for us to see. So here, this is what we mean. You see here, you can see that this is one kind of replication. And when you replicate it again, you can see consistently that these plants are consistently doing well. These ones are not doing well 3 times. So this means that it is not due to chance, but it is due to the nature of your experiment, and your independent variables are really working, but at a different scale. So here, the error will be very low. Now, depending how much of your sample size, the type depends on the type of research you do. So here, I cannot give you the number. We have our formula to calculate the social sciences, the humanity. You have your own way. But what I'm just trying to tell you is you need replication, but it depends on situation. It can even be financial constraints or other things. Now, for you to add credit to your work to make it valid also, you must understand what we call experimental designs. And later on, I will have to let you understand the difference between experimental design, experimental sampling methods, and statistical method. They are different. Experimental designs are the way you design your research to avoid bias. Remember, I did talk about bias. So that example, if I take you back here, And then now, let's say my bias is here, I decided not to apply fertilizer, and I apply fertilizer here just to favor these plants. This is bias. So you have to design the experiment in a way that each independent variable may have equal treatment of environment that you keep them in, so that the true reflection of the independent effect will be shown. So this is what we call experimental design. Now, it depends also, to choose an experimental design depends on the type of your research and the level of precision that you need. Again, time will not permit me to go into details, but if you are a science student or you are a scientific, you are in the realm of pure sciences and applied sciences, you have no choice but to know this. There is something called completely randomized design. Then we have randomized complete block design. We have to know this, Latin square. We have to know split plot design, split plot design, lattice balance design. You also have to know strip plot design. All these designs have their own strength. Under certain situation, you cannot use the first one, you fall back to the second, third, fourth, it becomes complex and complex. So these are what we call experimental designs. But maybe those of you in the social sciences, maybe you just stop here. But we in the sciences, we go up to this level. That otherwise your work will never have that credit, because you are going to have bias in your work. Now, if you are not very, very sure, always remember to fall back on those who know. In research, you don't have to feel shy when you don't know. Fall back and go to the expert. Now, the last part, or maybe the ending part of it, will be sampling. I'm not going into details. Those of you in the social sciences or humanities or whatever, you know much. But just as I was trying to say, sampling is a way of pulling out your what? The elements of your research. But it's very, very important that it's not about sampling. We have to check whether your data is normal or not. And one way to check whether your sampling work is good is to check the normality. Of course, it depends on the nature of the experiment. So here we are talking about skewness. Is it skewed to the negative, the left, skewed to the positive, or is just a normal distribution? Because certain research will have a normal distribution, some will not have. If it's not, and you don't have a choice, what kind of statistical analysis will you use? That's where you go to non-parametric. So here we also have to know something called kurtosis. Kurtosis, your kurtosis is somewhere here. You will see that this looks very flat. That tells you the data is not normal, and the peak is also there is not normal. So we want the red one. There are all situations. When I get to the next topic called statistics in my next talk, I will go deeper into this aspect. So this is what I was trying to demonstrate. Now, example. This is an example. There are so many ways to run normality tests. Let's say if I were to run a data and I check the normality, this should be the real points that your data should fall. So that you will see here, this data, the star data are your data. You can see that they are not in line with what we call the standard, what we call prediction. So there are some outliers. If you look at here, you are having an outlier. Outright, I can tell you that this data is not normal. There are so many ways, QQ plot and whatever, there are so many ways to do that. So this is an example of normality test. But if your data is normal, you can see that your data points will be moving towards what? The line of fit. So here you can see. So this is why it's very important that you go for normality test. And when you are doing sampling, take your time and know just basic terminologies about sampling. Population element, census, frame. Remember, there's a difference between population and census. There's a difference between population and sampling frame. They are all different things. So if I were to give an example here, the star, the total will be your population. The individuals will be your case or the element, where the number that you want to represent your population becomes your sample. Now, but when you talk about census means you are counting every individual as much as possible to get the total. So that becomes a census. And research, we don't go for census, we go for population. Because we can't get population, we draw on samples. Now, but you need to know the difference. There are three types of population that you need to know. One is finite population. The population exists. let's say the total number of UPM students. We have the database, we know. That is what we call final population. But sometimes infinite population, the population exists, but it's not practical to count. So the kind of research you do here might be completely different. So you have to know. And then the last part is what you call conceptual population. Conceptual population means you are assuming the population exists, but it doesn't exist. Example, if somebody does cloning and comes out with 3 types of species, and they are the only one that exists, that is the conceptual. You are talking about the population being 3, but in reality, it can be more than 3 or less. So these are the things that we need to be very clear. And when you are talking about sampling frame, it consists of the what? The population element from which you draw your sample. This must be very clear. So here we are talking about this, the population, and it becomes my frame and I draw from it. But let's say example, you have a population of students and you are interested in African students. There are other parts of the world that are also there. So your sampling frame should be the African student, not the total number of the students in that kind of setup from different parts of the continent. That is what we mean. Now, how do you do the selection of your samples? So many ways, your formula. But the basic thing is have a target population, select your sampling frame, decide on whether you are going for probability or non-probability sampling, and then what are the procedures to sample your units, determine your sample size, select a sample unit, and then you conduct your research. Now, because you are dealing with sampling, you have to be aware of random error. Random error means because you cannot get the population and you took a sample, how can the sample results be different from that of the population? If they are not similar, that means that your sample never represented your population. So that error where your sample outcome is not as your population outcome, that error is what we call sampling error. Sometimes it can be due to nature, or sometimes it just could be to sample that is not really valid. Now, sometimes it could be due to fluctuations. It could be that some individuals that you sample do not reflect the population. Therefore, you might end up with a bigger error. Or sometimes the error was just due to what? Misrepresentation of your population, and then that's it. Then we also have what we call systematic error. But systematic error is just because of an error that does not represent your population at the same time because you didn't have good experimental design. Just like I did say, imperfection in your research. Example, if you're a science student and then you are using, let's say, machine A, and you have another substitute machine B. So for 1 year, you use machine A to analyze your data and it broke down, and you have equivalent but not very precise, you fall on machine B. Because you brought machine B into the system, you are leading to error. That error is what we call systematic error. Now, you might also have sampling error, sampling frame error. That is the error that I'm trying to say, that it's an error where your sampling frame was actually flawed before you took the sample. Now, to avoid bias, it's always good that you develop a very good sampling techniques. Extremely important. Now, what are the groups of sampling? I'm not going to details. We have what we call probability sampling, where every individual have the chance of being selected. And then you have non-probability sampling, where it is just judgmental. People have no equal chances of being selected. And normally qualitative research will do this. So basically there are so many of them, but I think that as a scientist, at least you should know a bit of probability and non-probability. So if I take example, like I move through probability sampling, one basic one is random sampling. Random sampling can be cheap and fast, but if you look at this kind of randomness, you can see that certain spots are concentrated, certain plots are shallow. So when your research sample does not represent the population is scattered like this, you don't get good results. This is a very good example of random sampling, but it's going to be extremely expensive and time consuming. So this is where the errors will come, and you have to be very, very good in dealing with this kind of errors. And again, when you talk about random sampling, you can just look at this exercise. You have decided to just take randomly So you have chosen this red part and the green and the blue, and then this represents your work. So this is an example of a random sampling. And then systematic sampling, as the name goes, you have a system. If you look at here, you will go in this direction, go in that direction, go in that direction. You can see clearly there is a pattern. So this is what we call systematic. And systematic also, you just assign random numbers. Maybe you are saying that every 3 spacing. So for example, you are here. You arrange them from the lowest to the highest, and then there is a way to choose the number. So here, 1, 2, 3, you choose 1, 2, 3. So the interval is 3 until you get it. There are serious flaws that you need to take care of. So which one you use, you must be able to know why you are using them. So we have a way of calculating them. I will not have time to go into that. For cluster is an assumption that you are making. It can be quite serious. Let's say like you are going to do a survey or research on, let's say, applied sciences, pure sciences, social sciences, and you are talking about humanities. So you group them into four groups. Remember, when you talk about applied sciences, not necessarily that they are almost the same, but they have the basic foundation. If you say social sciences, they have a commonality. So from here, you group them into 4. Then from there, you pull out 1 or 2, a 2 or 3 cluster to represent the population. Of course, there must be a flaw in it. So all these things must be clearly known to you. Stratify is a little bit homogeneous, where you group your individual, your subject into a very homogeneous way. And then from there, so here you can look at it clearly. This is very homogeneous. Then you draw your samples, and at the end of the day, this is what you are using. This is an example of stratified sampling. And then if I were to show you, like we are talking about Caucasians, Black American, Hispanics, and then you can do so. But in stratifying, you need to understand something called proportionate stratified sampling, where you base on a ratio. So let's say like you have 3, groups A, B, and C, and the population size is what? 120 and 300 and 200. So here, you must have the proportion. You come out with a proportion based on your study. So here, if your sampling fraction is half, that means that this is 50, this is 100, this is 150, based on the proportions of the population size. Sometimes you might also use disproportionate sampling. Here you can see, just like you are comparing the population of China, India, and let's say like Ghana. You cannot use the same size. So it is up to you now. So if let's say you have 100, 200, 300, now if you have the fraction, the sampling fraction to be like this, then it makes sense. The one with the higher population will produce more compared to the less. That is how it is done. Now, after I have gone through this, the basic consideration you should take care of in any experimental, what we call it, techniques, will be the extent of your accuracy. Should be able to define where you are headed, logistics, and then time. Now, also the nature of your study, whether it's going to be local, national, international, or continental, is also very, very important. And sometimes for you to choose a sample design or a sample technique, you must have a prior information about the population. Sometimes if it's field work, you must have an idea. You cannot just jump in like that. And then need information on statistical aspect. Your sample size is definitely very important, and you should know what kind of data you are taking. Whether you are taking data that are very primary or secondary, they are very, very important. This is why you should know what is dependent, independent, qualitative, quantitative, and whatever. They all have their own way of looking at things. So it's very important that you abreast yourself with time, and then you know them. And then look at the variables that will answer your questions. Any variable that does not answer your question doesn't matter. You ask students, why are you analyzing this data? Why are you taking this variable? You say, because my friends or my supervisor said I should do that. You don't do this. That is not the way. So here, example, if you talk about plants and you want to know how much nutrients are being taken, the best time to look at the nutrient uptake is the vegetative stage. You don't take nutrients when they are in the mature stage. So these are some of the things. And then the facilities you use will be very, very important. What kind of facilities? Are the accuracy is there? Are they up to standard? Very, very important. And you must know what kind of software, what are the statistical programs that you are going to use. You must even understand how to put your figures, tables, and charts. They are very, very important. So when you talk about a table, Table normally will contain a list of numbers in columns and rows. So here, tables are to show differences between your treatment or your variables, and not to show relationship. If you want to show relationship, you use figures. So tables here must also give accurate information. If I want accurate information, I put my results in tables. Sometimes you might have your table information is too huge, therefore you need to put it in table form. You can imagine you have this information and you want to put in a graphical form. It's not going to be possible. This is why you need table. And remember that sometimes you want to publish in journals, but too much of figures may be compacted into tables to save space. And then this is very, very important for you to discuss your work clearly. And then remember, do not put tables. Tables, you have to have a statement, at least a paragraph, then you refer to the table. You don't put the table on top before you bring your text. Your text must come before your table. It's very important. And your title, the title of the table must be on top of your table. And it must be very informative. It must describe the content of your table. And if possible, provide error measures. Standard deviation, standard error must be provided. But when you talk about figures, when we want to see something very sharp, we want to see it at a glance, then you might talk about figures and it can give you concepts. Now, when we say figures, remember we are talking about graphs, maps, images, drawings, and so on. Now, figures also should communicate specific information. And what are the specific information? If possible, for comparative work, it is very good that you use figures. So this is what I call comparative work. You can see these lines, we are comparing the peaks. So every line will tell you something. So this is the beauty of presenting your data in figure way. And this is another example to share with you. Now, figures also must have numbering. You must number your figure, and then the title must be what? You have to have your text before the figure comes in. And then the other part will be, this is something that a lot of mistakes have been going on here. When you are using figures, you must know which is your independent variable and dependent variable. So if the independent variable is numeric and the dependent variable is also numeric, then you use figure. So you see, this is numeric. You see, 2007 until 2015, these are numbers. So when you have number in your x-axis and number in your y-axis, you can do functional relationship. Therefore, put it in a figure form. Don't put it in a bar chart form or in a table form, so that we can see the relationship easier. Now, again, this is here. You can put it in a bar form because this is not numeric. So when the x-axis is not numeric, then you can use bar. If it's numeric, it's very important that you use a figure. This is a simple mistake that a lot of people have been making. So this is another example. Sometimes when you talk about proportions or percentages, then the best way to present your data will be in terms of pie charts or bar graphs. So here, this is an example where you want to show the proportion. So it must be in a what? In a pie chart. And then unit or figures, remember, must be provided. You must have your units, whether it's table or whatever, units must be there. And then have some measurable, what we call bar lines. This is, you see, once you see this kind of research, you can say that the accuracy of the work is there because the bar lines are very short. That tells you that the error level is very short. So the credibility of the work is there. So don't present your mean without showing us your error level. It's very important. And this is an example. This is a very bad data, very poor data. Look at it. If you look at here carefully, you can see that the bars are showing a lot of errors, too many errors in your work. This cannot be accepted in any scientific community. And then also, if possible, do not represent the same data in text. Then you present it in figures and tables. That is unacceptable. It means you don't know how to present your data and how to interpret it. One must be good for all. So if it's figure, I have told you how to present. If it's table, that is how you go about it. Sometimes it's not necessary you put your research work in figures or tables. It can be in an equation form. and that will be more meaningful. So it depends on your work and then the nature. This is just an example to show you net present value. You can put in an equation form. You don't need to put these kind of things in a what? In a table form. So have a work schedule, a very good work schedule, when to start, when to finish, who to do what, when to finish, who should do what, and where to get what, supply needs, how long, how labor sufficiency. But all these things, please be realistic and don't be too ambitious and don't overwork yourself also. So those are some of the things that I think I could share in the physical conduct of your work. You need to go into all these things. So ladies and gentlemen, the last part will be your data analysis. Where you are doing the data analysis, you should know what kind of software, what statistical analysis, what are you looking for. These are very, very important. For you to do this, you must know a lot of statistical techniques. Very, very important. If you are a postgraduate student, a good scientist, you must know statistics. So may I ask you, do you know what is parametric statistics, non-parametric? These are all parametric statistics that you need to know. In my subsequent lectures, I'll be pulling out and then we learn what is t-test, f-test, ANOVA, contrast, multiple mean comparison, ANCOVA, cluster analysis, SPANOVA, normality test, sampling error test, validity test. All these things must be clear to you. Repeated measures, combined analysis, correlation and regression, principal component analysis, trend analysis, and then stepwise regression, data transformation, collinearity. All these things you as scientists must know, because when you want to rely on pure statistician, they are just generating number, but you need to know what you really want and how you apply it. That is why you need to know. What about chi-square? Homogeneity test, reliability test. These are what we call non-parametric, these are the non-parametric chi-square, Wilcoxon's rank sign test, Cruz-Vallis, Wisconsin's rank test, and then Kolmogorov sign test. All these things, you must know them. They are very fundamental and very basic. If you are interested, we will hold another session. So at the end of the day, for me to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, you have to know the difference between sampling methods, experimental designs, and then you have to know what research tools. I have talked about this. If you want further explanation, we will go. So the key difference must be there. You also have to know this repeatability of your research. Can we repeat it? Can we replicate your research? Can we reproduce accurate values? And these values, are they reliable or not? Thank you very much, the chairman, my respected audience. So my conclusion will be that there is science in research, and it's an art which every researcher must master. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate your audience. And to my respected all the childhood friends who are here to support me, I'm very, very grateful to all of you. Thank you so much. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moderator, Awal, I think Awal is offline. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. I will open the floor for questions. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Okay. Please, can I ask?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Yes, and Prof, thank you once more for this powerful presentation. My question one is about normalizing data. So I have data that I have done the normality test. So I found some of the data to be skewed, but still I want to use this parametric test for my analysis. So I decided to do normality, or to normalize the data so that I could still use the parametric test. Is there any problem with that? So that's my first question. My second question has to do with presentation of results. You mentioned that you don't use tables to present results that has to do with relationships. But I usually see people present the results of chi-square data, and I mean, they use tables to present data that has to do with chi-square. How about that? And then my last question will have to do with presentation of data with charts. What is the problem with using multi-dimensional figures? Using multi-dimensional figures in presenting data, is it possible it could exaggerate the difference that you want to show? Thank you very much, Prof.
All right. Thank you very much again for these very good questions that are very pertinent. Maybe I will start with the first question, where you are talking about you found out that your data was not the data was not normal, and then you tried to normalize it, right?
Yes, please.
Now, when you say you normalize it, do you mean that you just tested and it's not normal and you did some transformation or not?
Yes, please. I did transformation.
Okay. If, let's say, example, you have a data that is not normal and you transform the data. Now, you have moved the data to a new scale. I'm not sure in your field. In my field, we have something called log transformation, square root transformation, arcsine transformation. Now, if you transform the data, you have moved it to a new scale. So the new scale that you are using is just a more or less like you are trying to normalize and remove the outliers. So here, there wouldn't be any problem if you report the data, but the results that you are reporting must come to the original result because you have already transformed. So for us, what we do is when we transform and then we do the statistical test and we find out that maybe like variable A is different from B, the transformation that you have done is not the original numbers. So you will go to the what you call the former number. So at the end of the day, the conclusion is valid. Okay. So long as normality has been done and it is all right. So you can take it that way. But assuming you did the normalization and still the data is not normal. So you don't have a choice here. What you can do here is to stick to your non-parametric. Is it clear to you?
Yes, please, very clear.
Right.
Prof, if I could just ask a follow-up question on that.
Okay.
There's this perception, I don't know whether it's just perception or there is some factor, that parametric tests are superior to the non-parametric test. How do you have to say about that?
This is very interesting. Can I tell you a story before I answer your question?
Yes, please.
There was somebody in our faculty, a student, who moved from science and used non-parametric like chi-square, and when he went for Viva, he was failed because he used chi-square. Mm-hmm. So you see, there is nothing like, non-parametric is more powerful than parametric. It depends on your data and what you want. Okay. Example, this will lead me to answering your question. If, let's say, example, I want to talk about cause and effect. Can I move you to regression? May I?
Yes, please.
Now, you know regression, you must clearly know your cause so that you can predict your effect, right?
Yes.
Now, if we say non-parametric is very powerful, the closest to non-parametric to parametric will be chi-square. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
But chi-square is not used to quantify relationship, just like correlation is not used to quantify relationship. It just tells you there is some association.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes, please.
So that kind of association, if I ask you, quantify it in terms of percentage, you can do this. And the only time we can do is to use regression or stepwise regression. So you see here, if my understanding is to establish a relationship and quantify the prediction, let's say if X changes by this much, how much will be my Y? Chi-square cannot do this. Therefore, you can say that chi-square is more powerful or regression is more powerful. It depends on what you want.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to say that it is true. For me, I don't believe this statement is true.
Okay.
Have I answered your question?
Yes, please. Very well.
It depends. That's why you have to know most of the statistical analysis. Some will not work, some might work very well. Sometimes you see example, you might combine cluster analysis with even correlation. You might combine what we call repeated measures with chi-square analysis. So it depends. Now, you're coming down to your functional relationship. For me, to be very honest with you, if you are into predictions, linear and non-linear things, I would say that you go for parametric. Okay. Now, you are talking about charts, right? In multi-dimensional.
Yes, please.
Yes, you can do that. You can do that if the data permits you. But if it's just X and Y, how can it be multi-dimensional? So it all depends on the data that you generated. Am I clear?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, Prof, just that sometimes you have data that you just X and Y, but you know, when you explore, when you try to use either Excel to do the graph, it has these options for you.
Yes.
And you know, sometimes it has this multi-dimensional. When you select it, it presents it in several shapes, and
yes.
that's the kind of presentation that I'm talking about.
Yes, I mean, I get what you are saying. Let's say example, again, it depends on what you are looking for. May I use my field to demonstrate this?
Yes, please.
Very good point. You are making a very good point. Let's say in my field, let's say in agriculture, I want to show that I have a plant and I have done analysis. I have what we call above ground and below ground. You get what I'm saying? Yes. So above ground will be the plant on top of the soil. Below ground will be the roots. So if I were to draw, yes, I can choose a drawing or a chart that can show me the dimensions, showing me that some are in the soil, some are in the what? On top of the soil. Then what you are saying is good for it.
Okay.
Did you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
But if, let's say, I'm interested in only above ground, and when I display in the simple diagram for me to tell you that I'm just talking about background, that is fine. You got what I'm saying? Yeah. To give extra information if it's necessary is acceptable. But in science, we are talking about exactness. I give you another example. You know Excel?
Yes.
Excel, you can use Excel to draw regression analysis. And then you can get the equation. Can you follow me?
Yes, I'm following, but I don't know about that.
Yes, you can use Excel. Okay. You can explore. You can use Excel to draw relations, X and Y, and it can give you the equation. But actually, that equation is not statistically tested.
Okay.
So if I do my statistical test, my equation may be a little bit different. So when I'm doing the graph, like the intercept, I will use the intercept from my statistical analysis before I draw the graph. So you need to be careful. It's not whatever you draw that has some good, meaning. So you need to be very, very careful by just saying, I want to draw this will give you more information. Yes, but scientifically, is it necessary or not? So it depends on the data that you are analyzing and what you are looking for, so that you don't abuse the concept. That's all that I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Is it all right with you?
Very clear.
All right. Hello, more questions?
Prof, we have some questions in the chat box and the Facebook as well. So I would like to read some of them if there are no questions on the board.
Okay.
So the number one question is, some students or researchers put certain information in the text and not available and not the table or graphic. So if you don't find details of a resource in a table or graphic, I think we need to look further.
Okay. May I go one by one?
Yes, please.
Yes, I mean, I can't just imagine you have, let's say, a lot of data sets, and you just refer to the data set in a text. I think when we talk about scientific writing, this is not acceptable. But if, let's say, you have 1 or 2 or 3 data sets, and then you just mention in a text, I don't see anything wrong with this. But just like I show you a table, how can you represent the whole table in a text? This is the place of a table or a figure. They summarize and give you the data that you need to refer to. So in that aspect, it will be good if you have a table or a figure so that we can refer to. That will be useful. But if you are highlighting key values or key results, 1 or 2, you could refer them into your text, but not too much. So this is what I do know. And even in your abstract, you can have 1 or 2 key values in your abstract or in your conclusion. So that is what I know. I do know certain students also, they will have the whole information in a table and they repeat them in the text. That is also unacceptable. So I think that is what I can say about this kind of question. It's not acceptable that you should repeat all your text message, your figures in your text. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. The following question is, can the researcher or student also not attempt to present their results or proper explanation for such a data or resource?
I didn't get this question clearly.
Okay, I think he's continuing. I think not all research generalize, or therefore those related to a particular research sample or data should be allowed for explanation to trigger further research.
Oh, okay. Okay, I've got the point. Okay, I have got it. You see, okay. Maybe if I get it wrong, you let me know. What the person is asking is, you generate data, and when you are going to present the data, not every data will be necessary or good for you to present. You only present the important data. That's the question, right? Okay.
You see, Richard, you want to say something about this?
Okay. Prof, Prof, good
yes.
Morning from here.
Okay.
The point I'm raising is that sometimes we have the objective that once I have set the objective to go direction X, everything must sync to that tune.
Okay.
But oftentimes you realize that after you have conducted your research, gotten your results, and do every analysis that you need to do, your results is pointing towards Y.
Okay.
You have taken funding from somewhere. Must you stop that reporting that results? My thinking is that you still need to report on the results. The reason is that people do a whole lot of things without taking into consideration of others. But this result may be pointing research towards another direction. So it is important we report this. I am saying this because if I got you right, when there's a reason for having a null hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis. Okay. So if I have my null hypothesis saying that there's no difference, what in my view it means is that when I take that sample and analyze, my results should be based on that sample and not the general population. Okay. And therefore, if I want to extend it to the general population, what then I am saying is that when I take that sample means and whatever it means to me, when I take it to the general population, I must have same or different. For example, if I say that to grow rice, you need to acquire land. And then I have my null hypothesis saying that no, there is no difference. What it means that when I go to the field or the general population, any other person who is growing rice will have no requirement for rice. But we know that practically that is not true. So there is the need for us to explain why it is not so. Perhaps something had gone wrong. Data, the right data was not collected. Some data were missing and a whole lot of other things. So we need to explain. Then it will prompt further research for anybody who wants to still investigate that particular area and come up with the truth or what we need to know.
Okay. Okay, that's Mr. Richard.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. I think it's a very, very good question. However, we need to be careful here when we are reporting research findings. If your research, you had something called mechanical error, what you are saying, example, assuming that your sample did not represent the population, the measurement, like you said, were wrong, or there were some errors, mistakes. These are mechanical errors that had already flawed your research. So there is no need for you to explain the results. It's completely rejected because we cannot accept wrong information and try to justify it. This is why you need to go through the scientific norm very closely and very, very meticulously. Now, number two, if you say you set your direction, sometimes these things happen. You set your direction to X and you ended up in Y direction. There are two things. One could be either you are bringing in a new findings, assuming your research is valid. Number two could be that, Number two could be that there were a lot of flaws in your work that led you to something else. And number three could be that you couldn't set your hypothesis very well. That is why when I was showing you the steps in scientific research, I said it's not straightforward. Sometimes you need to move back to your hypothesis or you need to move back to your procedure and then see how it works. You get what I'm saying? So here, what I can tell you is, if it's a mechanical error, no one will accept it, no matter how much you explain. You have to repeat the experiment. However, if it's not due to mechanical error and it's just due to certain things like maybe sampling error, maybe machine reading was not very, very good, but it's acceptable, that is why you have 5% error margin, that could be all right. So we need to be careful. Now, talking about the alternative, null and alternative hypothesis, you cannot choose both in any research. Richard? Hello? Richard,
yes,
are you online?
Yes, that is right.
Scientific research is never for you to say that I'm going for yes or no. Then it's not a research. So if you start, let's say like now, I started and say that I am going to develop a product. And this product, I'm going to compare my invention to 3 existing inventions. Now, if I'm a serious researcher, what do you think will be my hypothesis? My hypothesis could be, I have a reason for going for this kind of research because I want to show that my product will be better than what is on the market. So if that is the case, you have already set your hypothesis to be what? Alternative hypothesis, not null hypothesis. You get, unless you want to say my product and that's a product on the market, there will be no difference. If there will be no difference, why are you doing the research? So these are some of the things that we have to be careful. How, again, like you are talking about the population, is very true. If, let's say, you have taken your sample and the findings could not be generalized, it's true. For instance, I do a research in a maybe like 50-meter hectare of a plot. You use agriculture. It could be very dangerous, or I do a research in a pot experiment. I grow plants and I try to extrapolate and say per hectare. That could be misleading. You get what I'm saying? So in this realm of sciences, every step you take will be scrutinized. So you have to be very careful. It's not what you think, but it's about what should be on. The one who discovered penicillin, you will see that it was off the, what we call it, the main target. But because the research was credible, he was able to go through. So Richard, we need to be very careful. We don't mix things. Otherwise, we might not be able to define our work very well, and it will be difficult for the scientific community to accept this kind of information. Am I all right? Hello?
I think you didn't get my question well.
Okay, sorry.
But if you don't mind, we'll have time to interact.
No. Just try to give a little bit highlight so that we can clarify. That's why we are here.
The point I am raising is that you have set first your null hypothesis. Then you have the alternative hypothesis.
Richard.
Yeah.
I think we need to understand statistics clearly. When you start research, Richard, we don't set two things at the same time. You see, what you are talking about is ordinary statistic, classroom statistic. That is what you are talking about, where you are being taught that we have null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. But what I'm saying here is, when we come down to research, your conviction and the gap that you have found already should lead us to the hypothesis that you want to test. So here, the point that I'm making is, if you say null, that is your expectation. Is it clear to you, Richard? So there is nothing like I'm setting null and alternate. It's a one target. So of course, we know the null, the other part is alternate. If you say yes or no, then you don't have a clear objective.
No,
so that
what I'm saying is that you have the null, you have the alternative.
Okay.
Very often in research, it is the alternative which is your expectation.
Yes.
There are situations that you will test, you will not meet the alternative. Yes. And that is where they talk of reject or accept.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Right. So now, if your alternative do not speak to what your expectation, but you realize that in practical terms, it should have. It means that
okay, Richard, can you stop here? I mean, you realize that it should be like that, right? But you couldn't get it. Am I right? That means that your review and your hypothesis was not solid. That's it. That's all that it means. There's no argument here.
Well, that is why I said that we can interrogate this later. Because it looks like
all right. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard.
Richard, I'm very sorry, Richard. I am sorry. You are rather not getting the point. You are missing the point.
Can I come in?
Yes, go on. Richard, you are missing the point, and you need to learn. That is not the way to learn, Richard.
Yes, Prof, you are right. He doesn't get
you are completely, I'm sorry, I don't want to say you are wrong. You have missed the concept completely. You see, once you start your research, you have exhausted the area and you have a focus. So if it turns out to be something that you couldn't expect, and all things being equal, then it means that your thinking was not up to that level, assuming there are no errors. Still is an information.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Prof, sorry to cut you short. Some students don't understand. Let's say when their hypothesis turn out to be rejected, they think it's also a finding. You have to explain it. Every finding is a finding. No bad or good finding.
Exactly what I am saying.
Yeah, that is if all your procedures are systematically, scientifically correct.
No,
all findings are findings. Prof, sorry, Prof, to interject. Sorry.
It's okay, Prof. Ali, thank you very much. I think unless Richard is running away from what he said when the research is flawed. So when the research is flawed and you find out something opposite, how can you accept it?
Prof,
what Prof. Ali,
Prof, we will have time. I will write to you. We will have time to integrate. We shouldn't be doing this here.
Maybe you should do after this with Mr. Richard.
And for the sake of time,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Richard, sorry, Richard. Take time. You will talk after this. But what I can tell you is you are completely off. It's just that you don't have the patience to listen to what I'm saying. Sorry for that. Go ahead. You will find out one day that if you go on with this, you are a PhD holder, your Bible, you will completely fail. I can assure you. How can you go and send a flaw information and say it's an alternative? What Professor Ali is saying is assuming everything
yes.
of yours.
Everything, yeah, it's true, yes.
But you are saying your work is flawed. Who is going
Yeah, it's
to
already
accept your
flawed.
work?
Yeah, it's like
Go ahead.
garbage in, garbage out. Flawed meaning
Yeah,
cannot
Richard, you have to
compensate.
be careful. If you don't take care, you can never publish any research in any good journal. The way you are talking, it's like you have fixed your mind and you are already telling someone that what I'm saying is not right. We have been in the research. I'm teaching statistics. So what I'm telling you, actually, you rather don't understand what I'm saying. You have to be humble in trying to get knowledge. What you are saying is completely off. I know, I have done research. I hear you. So go ahead. This is not the way to
sorry,
learn.
thank you very much, Prof. But we will have to interact.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I think maybe Prof can talk with him later afterwards, behind closed
Okay,
doors.
let's go ahead. Go ahead.
Prof is a mate. It's my mate, so I will have to talk to him.
Okay, all right.
All right, thank you. So we move to the next question.
Yes.
Is it wrong if you start from find the issue, then find the literature review?
You find what do you mean? You find the issue means you have found a problem, right?
Yeah. Can the person explain a bit what he meant by
because they can mean mean two things.
Yeah.
Please kindly clarify.
Can the person clarify that? Otherwise, we move to the next question.
No. I think it's a good question. It's really a good question.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Or can you reread it and let's see whether we can understand it?
So this is what is written. Is it wrong if start from find the issue, then find the literature review?
Okay. Find the issue means before you start. If before you start your research and you have got an issue and you find the literature and then you want to see whether you can do the research or not. I don't think there is anything wrong with this, because this is why I said sometimes you might find a research problem based on experience. Then from there, you can consult the literature to establish it, or you can consult experts. So there is nothing wrong. So long as you review the literature and you solidify by, yes, this is an issue that needs to be pursued, is very relevant, you go ahead. And then that's a very good question. So that could be based on experience or whatever. That's why when I gave you the options, you can get from literature, experience, observation, or whatever. But at the end of the day, why you need the literature is for you to make sure you are not repeating what others have done. That is all. Is it clear?
Yes, Prof. Yes,
okay.
Prof.
Go ahead.
So there's another one, part literature review. I'm sure he's saying part of literature review, we need to criticize the other article. It's a question. That's the question.
That's why I said, yeah, you need to be, actually literature review is more of argumentative. You are making an argument. But of course you will criticize, but you criticize based on point or based on facts, not just necessarily you want to crucify that paper and then make your work. No, you can do that. It's more argumentative. And if that's why I see, look for contradictions, look for weaknesses, and you punch a hole. This is just like review. In review, what that they are looking for, the good aspect and then the bad aspect or the flaws. So yes, it's allowed, definitely, it's allowed. But you have to be a very, it must be constructive.
All right, thank you. Another question, please, what goes into goes into presenting a comprehensive conceptual framework for a topic?
Well, I think for you to have a conceptual framework, I think for me, the basic thing that you should look for is, one, what has been done? Two, what has not been done? Three, what needs to be done? Four, what you can do, why, and how. So you have the journey. So now it's up to you now to draw the conceptual things and then back it with literature and then see. So I think for me, that is the picture that I have in my mind. Because if you cannot do this, then you cannot even set the hypothesis. So what are you going to achieve? That is why I was saying, so long as you don't know where you are going, where you are coming from, you can never get good results. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's another question. What's the difference between framework and model?
Sorry?
What is the difference between framework and model?
Well, they could mean different things at different times. If, let's say, example, I want to start my research, definitely I need a framework to lay my foundation and then pay my tentacles. A model can be it can be anything. I can generate model from my framework based on my results. Let's say example, I have 3 independent variables, and then I want to see how they affect a dependent variable. And then I have my framework, and then I do my research, I run my data. I can establish a model. So from the framework, I can get a model, or from the model also, I can develop my own framework by modifying the existing model. So it depends on your research and what you are looking for. If you could really get what my explanations, you can see that I'm not giving you yes or no answers, because it depends on the situation. As a scientist, I have to be very careful with what I'm saying. You get it? So it depends on what you are looking at and what you want to get. A model can be different from a framework. We can generate model from a framework. We can modify a model to get a framework. So it depends on the situation. Am I clear?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So another question from Charles. How can a person who is not in the academia conduct research which will be accepted in the academic community?
The question could be flatly, it will be very difficult for it to be acceptable in the academia if you don't know the scientific norms. If you don't know, this is why you need to understand research methodology. You need to understand experimental design. It's a whole culture. You get it? So it's not like something that you just jump in and you do. It's an art. That is why I started that. It's an art that you need to inculcate. So it's not that anybody can jump in, just like what they do in the market, you go and do survey, whatever. These are not scientific things. And it can never be accepted in any scientific community because you break the rules. It's just like you say, how can I drive without knowing how to drive? Definitely it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, Charles, do you want to clarify something? Charles?
I think
please feel free to ask whatever you want to ask.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I want to ask if there will be maybe another segment for publication. Maybe
oh yes.
How soon can that be? Yeah.
I think my next talk will be on publication. That is, in fact, I have a series of plans. I had wanted, let's say from this, we can talk about publication. I would like to teach you statistics and then how to really, so there's going to be a lot of series. So if you are interested in publication, the next talk will be on publication. A number of things can be clarified. Today, what I'm just telling you are the pointers. So that depends on your organizers. We have series of talk to come and things will be getting clearer.
Yeah, Dr. Another thing, thank you very much for your presentation. It was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Regarding you talked about how to get literature from journals.
Yes, please.
So you talked about impact factor. So can you give roughly what should be the minimum impact factor of a paper we should look at when we are trying to build our literature review?
I'm sorry. The impact I said is impact factor depends on your area. Don't worry too much about the impact factor, because in some area, maybe like you talk about nature is about 50 something, maybe in your area is 0 point something. What I'm saying is impact is in terms of scholarship. The flagship journals in your area, you are in your area and you know that these kind of journals, you cannot write your thesis without referring to them, then you focus on that. But impact factor is relative. It depends on your field. So maybe if you heard me wrong, if you heard me say impact factor, don't worry. But so long as they are refereed and they are credible journals, you can go for them. But the top journals will be the common ones that are always at the head of your research. Like in my field, we have what you call plant and soil analysis. You cannot talk American Journal of Soil Science. So we know these are the world-class journals that I will go into. So that's what I was saying. But the impact factor is just relative. Don't worry about the impact factor. But don't go for papers that are not refereed and they are not cited in the science citation report. Can you write this thing down? If you want to see whether your journal that you are reviewing is good, try to find it in citation report.
Okay,
if it's not in citation report, maybe the closest will be Scopus. After Scopus, for us, we don't consider them. In fact, now we have reached a level where we are not talking about Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. We are talking about top 1% journal, top 10% journals. That is the level that we have reached now. So it depends. But all these things, don't worry. So long as it's refereed, it's credible, go ahead.
Some of it is our first time of joining this. So how can we get maybe the next presentation? If it will be on publication, how do you get to know about that? Maybe the date or something?
I think the organizers will blast them for you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Hello, Prof. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, go ahead. Everybody, feel free.
Yeah, it's a pleasure listening to you. Yeah. So let me change the dynamic a bit. I'm just wondering because I can't resist speaking your mind on this issue because of your title and also your rich background and even the area and also the geographic region where you are. Turning your topic back to you, my question would be the science of research. What is Ghana missing, or what is Africa missing? Maybe Ghana would be more specific, but I think that with your background, you do have some ideas about this, and I'll be glad to just find out what you think, because I was just wondering, as we're going through your presentation, you know, about basic and applied and technological, you know, the different types of research. Where do you think we should be at this stage in our development? Thanks.
Okay, that's a very good question and a very difficult one, and it has some element of sensitivity here. For me, if you ask me, perhaps what I can say is, are we really committed to do research or not? That is my concern, because this part of the world and other parts of the world, you can see that they pump in a lot of money in research. And the people who are doing the research, when I say research, not only research, facilities, the platform, whatever. I give you one example. I was involved in one of the projects. Mine was just to look at just one aspect, and our group had only had about 10 million. After that, we were giving 1.2 million. After that, we've been giving 4 million. You got what I'm saying? So for me, it takes a political will and a national budget to focus on this kind of researches. That is why it's a very broad area. And then, because what I can see is Africa is capable. We have the people, we have the scientists, but sometimes when you visit some of them, their laboratories, their research environment is really pathetic. So for me, not until there's a national cake on research and development, I think it will be very difficult. For instance, in certain parts of the world, if you publish in certain journals, automatically you are giving huge research money. Certain countries are preparing their people to be research Nobel, winners. So you can see, so these are the things. So brother, it's a very difficult situation, but what I can tell you is take a political will to really go into this. So it's a huge area that I can't say yes or no, but from what I see is the research we are doing are very rudimentary. Now, to throw it back to you, can you tell me down the continent there, how many countries are serious to do research on COVID-19?
Yes. Thanks for the question as well. The reason I asked such a question, for example, is because talking about COVID-19 specifically, last week I was...
Sorry, Vampi, are you the one?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry, audience, this is my former classmate in Legon. Anyway, we all finished together. Thank you, Vampi, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's like I said, I found your talk very interesting, and I wanted to shift it a bit because I thought that in a bigger picture, we have to think about, our country as well. So it's interesting about COVID-19 because I posed a similar question to a meeting I had last week where some of the guys who were leading research in the forefront within the country and in Africa did a few presentations. So I wanted to find out if there was any coordinated, research to try and answer questions from our side of things, because obviously we seem to be getting a different scenario when it comes to COVID-19. So my question was to ask whether, there was anything going on. To answer that specifically, I think CDC Africa has a few countries online who are doing research, and but I don't know the details or the level of coordination or if anything has come out. Now, the reason why I asked you about probably what stage we should be concentrating on, or your views on where we should be at this time, is because because of this pandemic, I have had an eye opener in terms of the effect or the bearing of government on science and research, because this has sort of brought to sharp focus more reason why the government should be very interested in pumping money into research. And I think that if, like you're saying, if we do not focus, and if things like this cannot bring our minds to, putting a lot of our, effort into research and to pushing research, and not just research, but to cutting edge research, then I think that we will not be in a very good position. So I think that, to answer your question, I don't know the details of what is being done. I do know that in Ghana, there are quite a few groups who are doing something in order to, answer questions on COVID-19. So hopefully, but of course, if you don't have the proper backing and the proper funding, because we all know that research is very expensive. If you don't have the proper funding or the proper backing of government, then it is going to be very, very difficult to get anywhere.
Yeah, Vampi, I agree with you. To be very honest with you, research for you to get through, you look at Noguchi. I think, Vampi, you work in Noguchi, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
No, Vampi, Noguchi, we can trace back the history, right?
Yeah, definitely. A very long one as well. Yeah.
So today Noguchi has become Noguchi. I think there is foreign factor in this.
Absolutely. I mean,
So
Noguchi more or less donated by the Japanese, and they still support a lot. I mean, the facility that we are using to test COVID-19 now, which is more or less the primary, well, it is the primary facility for COVID-19 testing in the country, which is the Advanced Research Laboratories. Incidentally, is the most, I mean, the newest building at Noguchi now. And just, I think about 2 years ago, the Japanese donated it to Noguchi. So without that, I don't know where we would have been. I mean, obviously there's a lot of science going on, but the influence of support from especially the Japanese for Noguchi is, I mean, quite a bit, is a lot. So without that, I don't know where we would be.
Yeah, so you see, so that is exactly what I was trying to get to. At the individual level, maybe we might be very good, but when we don't have the push from the political side, then this is how it's going to be. So for how long are we going to rely on donations? So I just don't want to be very direct, but being involved in huge research or whatever, international collaboration, you will realize that they are doing very well because of the government support, because they value research and development. So it's not that we don't value, we definitely value, but I think we need to step up the game. So Van P, there are a lot of things that we can share off online, because this will be a little bit sensitive.
Definitely. Thank you
anyway,
very much.
my regards to colleagues all, my regards.
I
have my legal mates here. I have Kofodia Sectec friends here, T.I. Amedia. So thank you, all of you. Vampi, I'm so happy to see you online. Take care.
We are all very proud of you. So keep up the good work.
Sure, Vampi.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Such a very good insight. And thank you for that insight as well. All right, there's another question. Prof, how do we identify a gap? Is it by only one aspect? For example, just the place of study, subject, methodology, or combination of all?
There can be so many ways to identify a gap. Can I share you my personal experience? It's not that. What I just shared here are just different ways of getting it. There are so many ways. There is no one direction. I give you an example. I think about 10 years ago, I went for a conference. So when I was coming back, it so happened that I sat with one fertilizer company CEO. So when we were on board, we were just talking, and he started sharing with me some of their challenges. If you have heard about urea, it's a fertilizer that when you apply, there are a lot of gases moving here and there or whatever. So he was talking about it. So as we tried to discuss, I started to pick up certain key pointers. So pick up. So when I came back from what he was saying that were their challenges and the problems, I turned them into a real scientific problem, getting colleagues together, discussing, finding literature and whatever. At the end of the day, can you believe that I was able to produce 3 PhD students from their research? And then we have published numbers of papers. Some of the patents and the books that you are talking about, I got it from a fertilizer seller who is a CEO, is not a scientist. You got what I'm saying? So we cannot fix what I'm trying to say is a research gap can be anything. If you look at example, let's say example, like Van P was saying, my understanding is in the country back home, some people are even saying that the way that we react to COVID-19 is a little bit different from the other parts of the world. This itself is a gap of research that we need to do. You will not find this in the literature. It's based on experience. So what I can say is there are so many ways to find a gap, but don't focus your mind and say, why you read is to establish credibility and really see that there is a point to go further or not. But just to say somebody told me, or I think it's like this, that is not done. Is it all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Any other question from the floor?
Prof Ali, you want to say something?
Prof Ali?
And Prof Ali gone. Maybe
Okay.
he's out a bit. Mhm.
Prof, let me just ask this question. I'm not doing my PhD, I'm just doing my MBA. But so there are some projects that are advertised as PhD and they don't even require masters, and others require masters. What's the difference here? And what's your advice?
I don't want to say anything. Maybe the university have their own policies, but I think for me, it's a PhD without masters, right?
Yeah. There are some online, you check and you see that some PhDs are project-based and they don't require masters and they are saying first degrees, okay? Then,
Okay.
Traditional ones that require that you pass through masters too.
Okay. I think even UPM, we practice something like that. If you have first class, you could go straight to PhD. So I don't see, I'm not sure about their orientation. Yes, we do practices from masters to PhD, from first degree to PhD, but the condition is you must have masters. Sorry, you must have first class. That is the condition. I don't know other parts of the world or other universities, but I don't think there is anything wrong with it. So long as you do the PhD and then you try to learn as much as you can. But I know certain organizations who don't accept anybody who started from first degree direct to PhD.
To PhD, yes.
Yeah, there are some organizations who don't recognize that. So that one, I can't say much, but it is practice. Just like I told you last time that in certain universities, you don't even have to write your PhD thesis. It's the number of papers you have published. You accumulate them and you have some introduction, they have their own criteria, then you are done. So long as it makes an impact, it has some value. And I hope you are aware that you don't have to have a PhD to be a professor too. I hope you are aware about this.
Not at all.
You don't have to have a PhD to be a professor. Yes. So
Maybe
that's
not in
why.
Ghana.
Sorry?
Maybe not in Ghana, I guess.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, not in Ghana.
Yes.
Actually, the situation in Ghana, I don't know.
It's different. It's different. It's entirely different, please.
Yes.
It's not favorable. It's not favorable.
Yeah, it's not acceptable whether if you don't have a PhD under no situation will you get a professor, because we haven't seen some before. Unless maybe we are now coming to experience it. Other than that, no. Yeah.
I think the minimum requirement is PhD in Ghana now.
That is
Yes.
it. That is it.
So yeah, it depends on the national focus and all these things. So I think get back to the track. Yes, it's practice and whatever. But what we don't want is PhD, which is a coursework. A PhD that is a coursework. We have industrial PhD, you do research, but a PhD which is a coursework will not be recognized in most part of the world. So you have to be careful of this.
Hello, Prof. Does it mean that falls under the DBA, Doctor of Business Administration, Doctor of Business Administration, or DBA? What do we
in that case, by that one, yes. But what I'm talking about is especially in the sciences. I don't know much about the social sciences and the administration.
Okay.
But for the sciences, definitely is out.
Okay. All right.
Yes. And like I said last week also, you have to be very careful. In certain parts of the world, your first degree counts a lot. Otherwise, you will not lecture in their universities. If let's say you had a second class, third class, or your CGPA 3.0 or below, you will not be lecturing. So these are some of the things. So it depends. All right.
Yeah. Hello, Prof.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. My question is, we have thesis proposals and we have proposals for grants. What are really the differences?
Seriously, grant proposals are completely different. The requirements are complete. That's why in fact, if I didn't want to go into this because the requirement will be completely different and the style of writing is different, the content will be different, but the justification is the same. Hello?
Yes, Prof.
So basically what I can tell you is the way you write your research example, like even designing the experiment, sometimes they might tell you that you need some sort of transboundary. Transboundary here, maybe they want to see who is chemistry, who is in economics, who is in physics and whatever. I'm writing one now with some Japanese university. As I'm telling you now, I have people with economics, I have people with chemistry, agriculture, physics, environmental, analysis. So we are almost 11 of us. So you can imagine how you write it. So it's not like this kind of your paper writing or this kind of your PhD, they are completely different and the scheme is different. Even the title, the way you write your title, the way you write your objective, the language is different. Example, if it's a research, a grant bidding proposal, the title must provide why, and it must tell us what you want to do, and it must demonstrate the outcome. You see, so it's a different thing altogether. Is it all right?
Yes, please. Thank you. Maybe
Prof, will it be possible, Prof, if you get a lecture on that? Maybe,
exactly. I was going to make a request.
Because as a PhD holders, you finish your PhD, you go back to Ghana, and maybe within the institution where you are lecturing, you have been asked to come and give maybe a proposal on the sponsorship project, and you couldn't be able to do it. Meanwhile, you identify yourself as a PhD holder. I think that one too will be a very difficult.
Yes.
We don't want to fall into such category. So
you are right.
Maybe, yeah.
It will be an essential skill for us.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, Dr. Poku and then Dr. Kasim, I think you are right. There are a lot of things that we could share. If you until now, I have not talked about proposals yet. So to be very honest with you, those of you who are interested, you could organize yourselves and then we can, in fact, not only research proposal, how to file a patent. You have finished your PhD, like you said, you cannot go home the same way. You need to show your class. So I think those of you who are interested, we could organize something on that, because I've been on research evaluation boards and I can tell you what is the scheme that they want and whatever, right?
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much. We will do that.
You're most welcome.
We will do that. We will really do that because we need that seriously before we even leave the shores of this year.
And remember, now you have your PhD. More is expected from you, you know.
Yes.
Hello, Prof. This is Charles. My question is, how can you tell you have done an exhaustive literature review? Because the way I see it is quite subjective.
Yes, that's is that Charles Lomote?
Yes.
Yeah, that's another Dr. Charles Lomote. My former classmate in Legon is based in the United States.
No, SecTech, not Legon.
Sorry, SecTech. Sorry, from SecTech, Kofodia SecTech.
I'm so happy today. Or what?
Kofodia SecTech.
Kofodia SecTech, okay.
The only SecTech in Ghana. What else do you expect?
To disagree on that one. This is Vampi. I have to disagree on the only SecTech in Ghana.
Thank you.
No, but Vampi, I'm sorry to debate it, but Vampi, we used to have the only university in Ghana that time was Legon. The UST was the highest technical training, and then Cape Coast was the highest teacher training. The only university then was Legon. But Kwampi, the only sectech in Ghana is in Koforidua. Anyway,
I disagree, but we can continue that on another platform.
Okay. But by the way, to come back to your point, yes, Dr. Charles, I agree with you. It's quite subjective. That is why, but you try as much as you can to exhaust the literature. This is why we don't say that when you state your research statement, you don't say there is no information. We say there is depth of information, there is lack of information. You need to have a room for doubt. So I really agree with you. It will be very difficult for you to exhaust the area. So you are right. But you must, like what I said in the literature review, you must show an evidence that you have carved a niche that is original. So if you can prove that is original and it's not even exhaustive, but it is convincing and it shows some originality, I think it will be acceptable, because what we are looking for is your contribution, and that contribution must have an impact. So yes, you can definitely, and this is what I found out. I'm very sorry. Those of you, we review some of the papers, and you can see that paper from our region, you can see that the citations are generally very old. You see, so that one alone would tell us that you have not done an exhaustive review. And these are some of the reasons why papers from our region, most of the time, they are rejected, because you are not abreast with time. Now, I'm not trying to generalize, but you can see some of them are like that. So yes, right.
Thank you, Prof.
Prof, can I come in, Prof?
Yes, please go
Hello,
ahead.
Prof. Yes. I could see that the reason why in our aspects of the world getting those information is based on certain resources that we don't have. For example, internet facility in the country is a big problem now. And if we are not getting these internet facilities the way we are getting here, getting and doing the research in Ghana is so difficult. For example, I have some of my colleagues, lecturers in the institution where they are doing their research at Tech. And one thing that they are experiencing, one challenge that they are experiencing, is the idea of getting a very fast internet facility. So in this situation, you realize that getting a current information to buttress some of their information is a big challenge to them. They are not getting it. So these are one of the key resources that is giving the research in the country very difficult for people to do it. And therefore, you realize that majority of the research, when you go online getting those information, are old researches. They are old researches that you are doing. If you are doing a research at this current moment, we are in 2020, and in your literature review, you are only reviewing 2010, 2008, 2005. It means that we are lacking behind, because we are expecting, even if at least within the 5 years limit is where we need to get those information from. And if you are doing a research that covers the whole world, everybody is looking at you. What information that you are coming out, you put it on the internet, everybody will read. And getting the information, and it's an old information, it means that we haven't gone anywhere. So these are one of the key challenges that the country is facing at the moment.
Yes, so that I think you have a point. That's why, I mean, that means the infrastructure. You are talking about infrastructure. Definitely. And even to add on to this, if you see the line of publication now, is becoming expensive. Now you publish one paper, it's almost $1,000 something. When your salary cannot, and then there is no avenue to pay for. Of course, people are against publishing. So these are the things that are making us lag behind and whatever. But I also want to blame some of you, the lecturers back home. No, not all of you, a little bit. I know some of my colleagues are lecturers, they are online. But what happened to your research allowance? I understand they wanted to form a pool where all of you will be bidding for your research grant. This is what we do here. The whole country, they will announce, We have Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, and whatever. So they open for bidding, and you try. If you get it, whatever. So we here, we don't have research allowance. You see. So we must find a way. I'm not sure how they give you your research allowance, but if you use your research allowance to build your house, you cannot eat your cake and have it. But again, there can be a national policy on this kind of thing. I know there should be so. But to be very honest with you, without the internet, and the other thing is what about the databases, the investors, are they subscribing to very important databases like Science Direct and all these things so that you can download papers?
Yeah. And Emirate, but all these things at a certain point in time, you don't get it. So it's very difficult for you to get these things.
Yeah. So that one, I think, is beyond our control. It's
Hello.
Yes.
Good morning, panel.
Hey, that's another one. Sena from another coursemate. How are you?
I'm good, and you too.
Yeah, he's also based in the United States. He's doing his PhD. I guess he just finished his master's. Okay, Sena, go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Yeah. About your case of trying to exhaust the literature. It also depends on the papers that you use. Like here, currently, we are only allowed to use American Horticultural Society publications. You might go online and get like Google Scholar and the rest, which may not be accepted. Now, if it happens like that, what do you do? Because I know you are in the eastern part of the world and we are in the western part. And then you publish. I don't know if we publish based on the requirements here in the United States as compared to what you have just told us. How do you line the two so that you fuse the two so that you have a good paper to present?
Well, Sena, your question is interesting.
Yeah.
If you have already been limited to those areas, then I think, does it mean that any paper, even published in Nature, can also not be accepted?
No, you can add a few of the, they are just trying to avoid those predator papers being quoted by students or whoever. So
yes.
if you bring a publication or if you quote from a good journal, I think it's acceptable.
Yes, but, that is what I.
How would you know what you are presenting? I mean, it's not based on a lot of publication from publishers or papers that are not actually papers that they want. Are you getting it?
Yeah, I'm getting you, but it is up to them to make the list, like you said that they've made the list. But for us here, what we do is the Ministry of Higher Education, every year will publish the list of credible journals. And within this list, they are controlled. This is why I said, one, we use a Web of Science. Okay. Web of Science, under Web of Science, you will have Science Citation Index. You have Social Citation Index. You got what I'm saying? Yes. So this database does not allow any predatory journal. In fact, when we talk about publication, I'll be talking about all these things. So for us, no matter how good the journal claims or whatever, we will subject it to these databases. If they are not there, we will not accept it. So for us, that is what I know. In fact, there are certain countries also where they will not even look at the paper, they look at the country where the paper was published.
Okay.
You got what I'm saying? So for me, what we do is we have our the database, and this database is credible in the whole world. So that is what we base on. And once you publish and it's listed there, even you don't have to pay a dime, the university will pay for the publication fee for you.
Okay.
But for predatory journals, definitely avoid it, because we avoid them. They will not send you anywhere. So Sena, if your university or your country has limited it, then I can't say much.
Okay.
I can't say much. I do know in the US, certain papers from India, they don't want them.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, but do you know of science? I mean, Web of Science.
Web of Science, yes.
Okay, just try. There's no predatory journal that enters Web of Science. So why can't you get good paper that is from Web of Science, the journal is credible, you show it to your supervisors. I think they know what is Web of Science. And until today, no one has disproved Science Citation Index. No one has disproved Social Science Citation Index. So you must know these kind of databases that are credible everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Long time, you are growing older, Sena.
Yes, no, not older, very old. Very old.
By the way,
I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming.
Sorry, Prof.
I'm coming in.
Okay.
I think our time.
Okay, all right. Okay, okay. I got excited because I've seen my old friends.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, maybe we may close.
Yeah.
Master, I'm coming in. I'm coming. I'm coming.
Professor Osman, I would like you to explain further regarding the fact that one does not need PhD to become a professor.
Sorry, come again. I couldn't hear you very well.
I said, could you please explain further about the fact that one does not need to have PhD in order for him to become a professor?
What I do know is some parts of the world, what they look at is, one, they will look at your contribution in terms of professional services. Very detailed. When I say professional services here, they are talking about consultancies, extension programs, and then what we call it, transfer of technology, and then your contribution to society. Definitely, they will look into your publications. They will also looking into your research grants and how much of research grants that you are leading, and your international corporations. They look into all these things. And then definitely they also looking, if you are in academia, then they will also look into the students that you have produced. So these are the set criteria for every professor to be promoted. So here, if let's say you have the masters and you have achieved just like a PhD holder, then they can give you the professorship. And it's not an honorarium, it's a full professor. So it depends on your level of the depth. Let's say, example, I know of somebody who has published almost 1,000 papers, and he has contributed a lot, and his name has become, like, if you don't mind, an authority in that area. So if you're already an authority, you have contributed a lot, they feel that you deserve to have it. It's just that you don't have your PhD, so they give it to you. But it is not very common. You must be very, very outstanding, and you must be known in the world.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. I guess there are a lot of things to discuss, especially when you have old classmates meeting. So I guess we can just close for now and reschedule our next meeting. I hope the interest level will be great, just like that. Prof, any final comments before we close?
Can I just come in 1 minute, please? Next time, I want the information to be beamed earlier so that we prepare. I had he put it on platform just yesterday.
Oh,
and, yes. So next time we want it to be early enough so that we can tell other people to join. That's,
please give me 1 minute. I have seen. I need to address my Sectecans friends. I have seen Kwesi Nkansa. Kwesi Nkansa, thank you for. Yeah, thank you for coming. He's one of my best friends when I was in Sectec. We were in the same house and we've been together. He's a very nice person. Nkansa, you want to say something so that I know if there are other Sectecans on board? Nkansa?
Yeah, Prof. What I can say is that you did an awesome job. Some of us have left academia, but we found your presentation very, very useful. And in fact, it's making us regret not staying in there long enough. But you've done an awesome job and you've made us proud, Prof. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I always remember Kwesi Kansa when we were in secondary school. He was the best biology student that I ever saw in my life. We were so close. And today he's moved from biochemistry. Kwesi, you are in the business environment, right?
Yes, I've moved into finance and farming. So I think I have to talk to you, because I do what I call farmology. It's more like trying to see areas where we can make money, in farming. So essentially that's what we do. But sometimes you need a bit of, in fact, I mean, they say farming is just 70% science, I hear. If you get the science right 70% of the time, you are likely to be successful. And that's what we're trying to do. So, as you know, we've been following you and,
No.
We are looking forward. We are looking forward for, and there was a question that I think Van P asked.
Yes.
Perhaps Van P did not want to put you on the spot, but you have to try and find time for us, in Ghana as well. We need you here as well.
Yeah, Kwesi, we will definitely talk.
Okay.
There are a lot of things that we can talk about, if you don't mind. I miss you so much, so much.
Same here.
Is
And
Patrick here?
On behalf of all your mates, you are doing an awesome job, and we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. These are my friends that I will never forget. They have been so nice to me, and I still remember them. So Kwesi, may God bless you, and extension to my friends and loving ones. Thank you so much. I didn't see, is Patrick here, UK?
I think he was here earlier. I think he might have dropped off.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyway, thank you very much, Kwesi. Is there any Amas colleague here that I need to acknowledge? Dr. Mutsaka, please, 1 minute. Is there any Amas, a fellow here that I need to address? Okay. Thank you very much. And then I think we will call it a day. Kwesi, we will talk off the line.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Kwesi, you also get in touch, please.
For the moderator.
Yeah, send I see you.
Okay.
Yes, get in touch.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Normally for the sessions we decide a month in advance. So God willing, we'll communicate early this time. And then I've said an email address in the chat box. So if you have any topic of interest you wish Prof to cover, just send an email or a message to that email. The topic will be considered. And to those of you questions, we will send direct messages to you if you wouldn't mind. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. We are very grateful and we benefit from the knowledge. Thank you so much. Okay, our moderator.
Yeah, I thought you were just closing. Thank you, Prof. It was such a wonderful presentation and we've benefited a lot from this. And we are so grateful and we pray that God should continue to guide you and protect you for us. And your readiness to share knowledge with us is so amazing, so selflessly. May God bless you. And thank you everybody for coming. Next session, we will be communicating to everybody. Please let us see this level of interest, this level of participation, so that the sharing will be in depth and we will all benefit. God bless everybody and God bless our homeland, Ghana and Malaysia. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just one last announcement. In case the monthly sessions perhaps too far, and then you need a special session with Prof, you can communicate to arrange for that, inshallah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bless you.